Hey guys, tonight we are traveling back in time, about 500 years, to a place that glittered on the water like a strange and beautiful jewel, the heart of the Aztec Empire. We're going to land you, yes, you right in the middle of the magnificent and frankly terrifying city of Tenochtitlan. It's a world of floating gardens, towering pyramids, and social rules so strict you might accidentally cause an international incident just by looking at someone the wrong way. The story we're diving into is one of incredible honor and equally incredible horror, a paradox that sits right at the center of their beliefs about life, death, and womanhood. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop me a comment and let me know what city you're listening from, and what time it is for you. It's always cool to see where we're all tuning in from across the globe. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing that hits you isn't the sight, but the smell. It's a complex blend: damp earth, the clean, watery scent of the lake, the smoky perfume of thousands of cooking fires burning fragrant wood, and beneath it all, the sweet, heavy fragrance of flowers. So many flowers. They seem to be everywhere, woven into garlands, carried in people's arms, and blooming in riotous color on the artificial islands that line the canals. You're sitting in a small, low-slung canoe, a Cihuateteo carved from a single log. The man paddling at the stern navigates the teeming water traffic with an ease that suggests he was born doing it. All around you, other canoes dart by, some laden with produce, like bright red tomatoes and green chili peppers, others carrying finely dressed nobles under cotton canopies. This is the Great Lake Texcoco, and ahead of you, rising from the water as if by magic, is your destination, Tenochtitlan. It doesn't look like any city you could ever imagine. It's a metropolis built on water. The journey from the lakeshore has taken you down one of the three massive stone causeways that anchored the city to the mainland. These engineering marvels are wide enough for 10 people to walk abreast, punctuated by wooden bridges that can be raised in case of an attack. But you veered off the main causeway into the city's circulatory system, a vast network of canals that serve as streets. You glide past the China Palms, the famous floating gardens. They aren't exactly floating, but are man-made plots of land, built by weaving reeds together and piling mud and soil from the lake bed on top. They are incredibly fertile, producing multiple harvests a year and feeding the massive population. This is a mainstream bit of knowledge, the postcard image of the Aztec capital. But what's less talked about is the sheer, obsessive cleanliness of the place. You see crews of workers sweeping the public squares, and other canoes whose sole purpose, it seems, is to collect waste and refuse from homes. For a city this enormous, the air is surprisingly fresh. The Spanish, when they eventually arrive, will be stunned by this level of public hygiene, so different from the grimy cities of Europe. Your canoe drifts into the shadow of towering white stuccoed buildings, their surfaces polished to a gleam that reflects the sun with blinding intensity. The sheer scale of it all is overwhelming. How many people live here? 100,000 historians are still arguing about the exact population of Tenochtitlan, but there's no debate that at this moment, it's one of the largest and most densely populated cities on the entire planet. Finally, your canoe bumps gently against a stone landing. You step out, your feet finding solid ground for the first time in an hour. You are now in one of the city's many markets, a whirlwind of sound and color. The air hums with the murmur of thousands of voices speaking Nahuatl, a language that sounds to your ears like a gentle, rhythmic flow of Tiendel sounds. Merchants are shouting their wares, iridescent feathers from tropical birds, fine pottery, obsidian blades sharper than steel, sacks of maize, and even, you notice with a jolt, a caged ocelot. Everything here seems to have its place. The market is meticulously organized, with specific sections for each type of good. This orderliness is a reflection of the society itself, rigid, hierarchical, and deeply religious. You can see it in the way people dress. The commoners wear simple cloaks of Maggie fiber, while the nobles, the PPLT, are adorned in brightly dyed cotton and intricate feather work. There's a clear code, and you get the distinct feeling that breaking it would be a very, very bad idea. As you stand there, a bit lost and trying to take it all in, you make your way through the crowd, finding the path that leads to the small family compound you'll be calling home. You don't know it yet, but it is within the walls of that simple home, not in the grand temples, that you will witness the strange and powerful beliefs that truly govern this world. The compound isn't a single house, but a cluster of small, single-story dwellings arranged around a shared central courtyard. The walls are made of adobe, sun-dried mud bricks and whitewashed, cool to the touch. The roofs are thatched, smelling faintly of dry grass and wood smoke. This isn't the opulent home of a noble, but the clean, functional space of a respectable family belonging to a Kalpulai, a sort of neighborhood clan that forms the basic building block of Aztec society. Life here begins before the sun. The first sound you hear each day, long before the first rays of light touch the top of the great temple, is a rhythmic, scraping sound. Sha sha, sha, it's the sound of the women, already awake, grinding maize on a imitator's sloping stone grinding slab. This isn't just any corn. You watch as the matriarch of the family, a woman with serene authority in her eyes, oversees the process. This is a crucial, almost magical step known as nixtamalization, a mainstream piece of Mesoamerican genius. It softens the kernels, makes them easier to grind, and most importantly, unlocks essential nutrients like niacin. Without this process, a society so reliant on corn would have suffered from devastating nutritional deficiencies. The resulting dough, called mosa, is then expertly patted and shaped by hand into thin discs and cooked on a hot clay griddle, a comal. These are the first tortillas of the day, the foundation of every meal. The daily rhythm is dictated by strict gender roles. As the sun rises, the men and older boys leave the compound. They might be farmers heading out to the China palms, artisans going to their workshops, or young men reporting for military training at the local telpot called the House of Youth. Their path is clear: to provide for the family and to be ready to fight for the empire. For you and for the women of the household, the compound is the center of the universe. Their work is a constant, flowing river of tasks: grinding more corn, weaving cotton on a backstrap loom, tending to the small garden in the courtyard where they grow herbs and chilies, caring for the youngest children, and maintaining the almost sacred cleanliness of the home. You watch one of the daughters, barely a teenager, sitting with her mother, the other end secured by a strap around her lower back. Her fingers move with a practiced grace, weaving intricate geometric patterns into the cloth. This isn't just a craft, it's a economic contribution and a sign of a good, well-raised woman. The education you witness is relentless and deeply ingrained. Children are not coddled. From a very young age, they are taught the virtues of obedience, humility, and self-control. ALL or eco, or a whiny complaint, is met with a stern gaze. I could earn a child a prick on the lip with a sharp, mighty spine. The punishments, you learn, can be severe. An older child, who is particularly rebellious, might be held over a fire burning with dried chili peppers, forced to inhale the acrid, stinging smoke. It sounds brutal, but in their worldview, it's a necessary lesson to forge a disciplined and strong character, a citizen worthy of the empire. This obsession with control extends to all aspects of life, leading to some surprising social rules. For instance, you quickly learn that public drunkenness is one of the most serious offenses a commoner can commit. It's not just frowned upon, it's a profound social disgrace. Historians note that for a first offense, a person could have their head publicly shaved and their house demolished. A second offense could be punishable by death. This isn't about a simple dislike of rowdy behavior. It's about a core belief that losing control of your senses, your tone or your life force, is an insult to the gods and a danger to the community. You try to understand the social glue that holds this small community together. This Kalpulai you are in, is it one big extended family? The head of the household seems to be a respected elder, and many seem to be related by blood or marriage. But you also see people who are clearly not related but who share a trade, like a group of feather workers in a neighboring compound. The exact nature of the Kalpulai is complex, and it's a question that academics still puzzle over today. Was it a lineage-based clan, a territorial unit like a parish, or a professional guild? The answer is likely a messy combination of all three, changing from place to place. In the midst of all this structured daily life, you see her, one of the younger women in the household. She moves with a slightly slower, more deliberate grace. Her belly is gently swollen with new life. There is a quiet sense of anticipation around her, a hopeful energy. In a world this rigid, a new baby is a celebration, a continuation of the lineage, a future warrior, or a future weaver. A normal, joyful part of the rhythm of daily life. But you can't shake the feeling that in this world, every joy is shadowed by a deep, unspoken reverence for the powerful forces that govern birth, life, and death. To understand the shadow that hangs over that impending birth, you have to look past the meticulously swept courtyards and the orderly canals and see the city for what it truly is: a stage for the gods. One morning you follow the crowds, a river of people in white cotton cloaks, flowing towards the heart of the city, the Templo Mayor, the great temple. The air, usually filled with the sounds of the market, is different today. There's a low, resonant thrumming of drums, a sound that seems to vibrate not in your ears, but deep in your chest. You stand in the vast ceremonial plaza, craning your neck. The Templo Mayor is not a single pyramid, but two twin pyramids standing side by side on a massive platform. They dominate the skyline, colossal man-made mountains painted in brilliant red and blue. The one on the left, painted blue, is dedicated to Tenochtitlan, the goggle-eyed god of rain and water, the giver of life. The one on the right, painted a stark, bloody red, belongs to Tenochtitlan, the hummingbird god of war and the sun, the patron deity of the Aztec people, the Mexica. This duality is everything: water and war, life-giving rain and life-taking sun. This is the core belief system of the empire in a single, stunning architectural statement. The universe, in their view, is a place of constant struggle, a delicate, violent balance. You listen to an old man nearby explaining the cosmos to his grandson, his voice a low murmur against the backdrop of the drums. He speaks of the 5 suns. The world, he says, has already been created and destroyed for times before. The first world by jaguars. The second by wind. The third by a rain of fire. The fourth by a great flood. You are living under the 5th sun, Mocihuaquetzqui, the sun of movement. And this sun, like all the others, is fragile. It is doomed to be destroyed by earthquakes. This isn't some abstract mythology for them. It's a terrifyingly real and present danger. The survival of the world, of everyone and everything you see, depends on one thing: keeping the 5th sun alive. And the sun, Tenochtitlan, has a very specific diet. He is perpetually hungry, perpetually thirsty. He feeds on the most precious substance in existence, chalk, ihotel, or precious water. This is the mainstream and often misunderstood fact about the Aztecs: their practice of human sacrifice. From your modern perspective, it's a brutal, incomprehensible act. But from where you stand now, in the shadow of that red pyramid, you begin to grasp the terrifying logic behind it. It's not born of simple cruelty or bloodlust. It is a cosmic duty. A desperate, ongoing effort to repay a debt to the gods and stave off the apocalypse. The victims, often captured warriors from enemy states, are not just being killed, they are being fed to the god. Their life was transferred to the sun to ensure it will rise again tomorrow. As the drums grow louder, a procession of priests ascends the steep steps of the Tenochtitlan pyramid. They wear black robes, their long hair matted with dried blood from previous rituals, a detail noted with revulsion by the Spanish. You can't see the top clearly, but you know what happens there. A sacrificial stone, a priest with an obsidian knife, a heart raised to the sun. It's a performance of faith designed to be seen by everyone in the plaza, a reaffirmation of the pact between the people and their demanding god. But Tenochtitlan and Tenochtitlan are just the stars of the show. The Aztec pantheon is a sprawling, chaotic, and frankly, confusing family reunion of deities. There are hundreds of them, each governing a specific aspect of life. There's a god for maize, a god for PULQ, their alcoholic beverage, and even, you learn, a goddess who is the patron of filth eaters. Her name is Telsaturification, sin, and also lust. People would confess their misdeeds to her priests, and she would, in a sense, eat their sins, leaving them purified, It's one of those wonderfully weird, niche beliefs that highlight the complexity of their spiritual world. She can inspire the most sinful acts, yet she is also the one who can cleanse you of them. Trying to draw a clear family tree of these gods is a nightmare, a task that has left many a modern scholar scratching their head. The gods' relationships are fluid, their identities often merging. A creator god like Mocihuaquetzqui can be both male and female. Tezcatlipoca, the smoking mirror, a powerful, unpredictable god of night and sorcery, seems to have a hand in everything, a trickster figure who can be a creator, a benefactor, and a villain, all at the same time. Historians are still debating the precise hierarchy and relationships within this vast pantheon. Was there a supreme overarching deity, or was it a more balanced system of divine powers? The answer seems to be yes, depending on which text you read and which god's cult you're looking at. You turn your gaze away from the temple and back towards the crowd. You see the faces rapt, reverent, and perhaps a little fearful. They believe this. Every single part of it. Their world is saturated with the divine. The gods are not in some distant heaven, they are here now, walking the earth, influencing the harvest, guiding the merchants, and as you are about to find out, standing watch in the birthing room. The fate of the pregnant woman in your family's compound is not just in the hands of the midwife, it is in the hands of this vast, hungry, and unpredictable assembly of gods. Back in the quiet of the compound, away from the thrumming drums of the Templo Mayor, a different kind of cosmic battle is about to be waged. The pregnant woman in your household, whose name is, let's say, Izel, is approaching her time. The air around her is thick with a strange mixture of hope and a very specific, culturally ingrained dread. You sit with the men of the family one evening as they repair their farming tools. The conversation turns, as it often does, to matters of honor. An uncle, a veteran of several campaigns against the rival state of Tlaxcala, speaks of the battlefield. He describes it as the place where the jaguars roar, a place of glorious death. To die in battle, he explains, is the highest honor a man can achieve. It guarantees him a special place in the afterlife. His soul, his T-E-Y-L-I-A-A-A, will be chosen to accompany the sun on its daily journey from sunrise to its zenith at midday. For 4 years, he will be a companion of Tenochtitlan himself, a warrior of the sun. This is a well-known path to glory, the dream of every Aztec boy. But then, the old man looks across the courtyard towards Izel, who is sitting with the women, her movements slow and heavy. Her battle, he says, his voice dropping to a more somber tone, is as worthy as ours. This is a stunning concept, a cornerstone of Aztec thought that is both profoundly egalitarian and deeply sobering. They believe that a woman in the throes of childbirth was a warrior. Her home, her bed of reeds, became her battlefield. The unborn child was her captive. Her struggle to bring the child into the world was seen as a literal, spiritual battle. If she was successful, she had captured her prize, bringing a new life, a future tribute payer or warrior, into the empire. The community celebrated her as a victor. But, if she died, her fate was not one of tragedy and pity. It was one of ultimate sacrificial glory. A woman who died in childbirth was considered to have fallen in battle. She was a warrior, just like the man who fell on the fields of Tlaxcala. Pierced was not a failure, it was a sacrifice of the highest order. This parallel was not just poetic, it was a deeply embedded societal belief. You see it in the language. The midwife, upon the death of the mother, would break into a series of loud, specific war cries. The same cries a warrior would shout upon capturing an enemy on the battlefield. The deceased woman was then given a special title, Mocihuaquetzqui, which translates to Valiant Woman. Her afterlife was just as glorious as the male warriors. While the men accompanied the sun on its morning ascent, the souls of these women, the Cihuateteo, had the honor of carrying the sun on their shoulders from its middays, zenith down to its setting in the west. They were the guardians of the afternoon sun, ensuring its safe passage into the darkness of the underworld. After 4 years of this sacred duty, they were allowed to return to the earth, transformed into beautiful, immortal spirits. It's a beautiful, powerful idea. But, as you learn more, you start to see the unsettling undercurrents. This belief system, while granting immense honor, also places an almost on women. Childbirth isn't just a biological process, it's a test of one's spirit and courage, a public and spiritual performance. The stakes are cosmically high. You come across a strange, related belief, a quirky little detail that reveals their mindset. The tools a person used in life were believed to be extensions of their spirit. When a great weaver died, for instance, her loom and weaving battens were sometimes broken and buried with her, as if to release their essence. Similarly, when a boy was born, the midwife would bury his umbilical cord in a place that symbolized his future. If his father was a warrior, the cord might be taken by his scout and buried on an enemy battlefield, a magical act to bind the boy's destiny to a life of glorious combat. But what about a girl? Her umbilical cord was buried right there in the compound, under the hearth, the very heart of the home. Her destiny, from the moment of her birth, was tied to that domestic space. It was her battlefield, her temple, her entire world. This intense focus on the spiritual significance of childbirth and death leads to a question that even today, historians and anthropologists debate. How much agency did these women actually empowered by this warrior status? Or were they trapped by it? On one hand, it gave their suffering immense dignity on purpose. Unlike in many other cultures where a woman's death in childbirth was simply a tragedy, here it was an apotheosis. On the other hand, it framed their entire existence around a single, dangerous biological function. Their greatest potential for glory was tied directly to their potential for a painful, early death. Did Isel feel honored, or did she feel a crushing pressure to succeed in her battle, knowing that the alternative, while glorious in death, was still death? You look at her again, her face calm in the firelight. She is participating in the rituals, drinking the special herb infusions the midwife prepares, and praying to the appropriate goddesses. She is doing everything a good Aztec woman is supposed to do. She is preparing for her battle, and the entire family, the entire cosmos, it seems, is holding its breath, waiting to see if she will emerge a victor or a sacrifice. The days turn into weeks, and Isel's belly grows round and full, a taut drum stretched over the new life within. A palpable sense of joy settles over the compound, a warmth that seems to radiate from Isel herself. This is the new hope of the family, made visible. The impending birth is a promise of continuity, a thread weaving the past and the future together. You watch as the household revolves around her. The matriarch ensures Isel eats the best food, choice portions of turkey, nutrient-rich amaranth grains and sweet, ripe fruits brought from the bustling market. Her husband, a young artisan named Iretzi, who spends his days crafting intricate mosaics from turquoise and shell, seems to walk with a new sense of pride. He doesn't say much. Public displays of affection are not the Aztec way, but you see it in the small things. Fragrant flower he traded for at the market, or how his hands, so skilled with tiny, delicate pieces of stone, gently rest on her shoulder for a fleeting moment as he passes by. The whole community feels invested. Neighbors from the Cowpolai stop by, offering advice and well wishes. An elderly woman, her face a beautiful map of wrinkles, shares stories of her own children, her voice a comforting, reedy whisper. Preparations are being made, has been woven from the softest reeds. Iretzi is carving a small wooden animal for the child to one day hold. This is the mainstream reality of Aztec family life. Children were cherished, seen as precious gifts from the gods, essential for the strength of the family and the state. A new baby meant another future farmer, artisan, priestess, or most importantly, another potential warrior for the ever-hungry son. But as the time of birth draws closer, you begin to sense a subtle shift in the atmosphere. The joy is still there, but it's now laced with a quiet, humming anxiety. The hopeful smiles are sometimes held a fraction too long, and conversations occasionally fall silent when Isel moves uncomfortably. The family's prayers, led by the elder, become more frequent, more fervent. They are addressed not just to the great gods, but to the specific goddesses of fertility and childbirth, like Tenochtitlan, the mother of the gods, and Teocalli, the goddess who resides, they believe, under the birthing bed. The world outside the compound walls suddenly seems filled with potential omens. A bird calling in a strange pattern at dusk, A pot that slips and shatters on the stone floor. A dream of falling water. Everything is a potential message from the gods, a sign to be deciphered. This deep-seated belief in portents is a fundamental part of their worldview. This leads to a whole new set of rules and taboos surrounding Izel, a quirky and revealing list of prohibitions. This is the folk knowledge, the less talked about underbelly of their ground cosmic beliefs. Izel is cautioned not to leave the house alone after dark, for fear of encountering malevolent spirits. She is told to avoid looking at anything that might be considered ugly or frightening, lest the image imprint itself upon her unborn child. She is strictly forbidden from looking at an eclipse. They believe that during a solar eclipse, the celestial monsters, the Titsamite skeletal star demons, descend to the earth to devour humanity. Pregnant women are considered especially vulnerable. If Izel were to look at the eclipsed sun, they believe her child could be born with a cleft lip, a sign of the demon's bite. The fear is so real that if an eclipse were to occur, she would have to hide indoors, perhaps with a piece of obsidian placed over her belly as a form of magical protection. You see the weight of these fears on Wyatt's face. The official narratives, the stories told by the priests and chroniclers, would have you believe that a man in his position would be stoic, prepared to accept his wife's glorious death in childbirth with pride. He would be honored to be the husband of Mocihuaquetzqui, but here, in the privacy of the courtyard, you see not a stoic Aztec warrior in waiting, but a husband, a soon-to-be father, who is deeply in love with his wife and terrified of losing her. This is a point historians still grapple with, bridging the gap between the formal, state's ancient ideology and the messy, personal emotions of everyday people. The codices and Spanish accounts are full of descriptions of the honorific rituals, but they capture the raw human fear that must have permeated these moments. Did the promise of a glorious afterlife for Izel truly comfort Cihuateteo, or was it a cold, abstract consolation for a very real and very permanent loss watching him? You suspect the latter. The cosmic honor is for the community, for the gods, for the empire. The fear of her empty space in this compound, the fear of raising a child without its mother, that fear is his alone. One afternoon the feeling in the air changes for good. The quiet humming of anxiety ratchets up into a palpable tension. Izel has felt the first real pains. The period of waiting is over. Her mother sends one of the young boys scurrying through the canals and pathways of the city. He is not going to a temple or a palace. He is going to fetch the most important person in Tenochtitlan, and right now the Tenochtitlan, the midwife. The battle is about to begin. The arrival of the midwife changes the energy in the compound instantly. She is an older woman, but she moves with a swift, no-nonsense authority that commands respect. Her name is Exoko, and she is a Tenochtitlan of great renown in this Kalpo. Her presence is a wave of calm professionalism washing over the family's rising panic. This is her domain. She enters the small dwelling that has been prepared for the birth. It's been meticulously swept, and a new reed mat, the pet lotel, has been laid on the floor. The air is thick with the scent of burning copal incense, a sacred resin used to purify the space and ward off malevolent spirits. Exoko is not just a medical practitioner, she is a high priestess for this specific, sacred event. Her first action is to set up a small altar in the corner of the room. On it, she places a small stone figurine of Cihuateteo, the goddess of childbirth, whose name means she who dwells on the glistening gourd. The symbolism is potent and earthy. The goddess resides in the earth, beneath the mother, pushing the baby up and out into the world. Exoko murmurs a series of quiet prayers, her voice a low, rhythmic chant, formally reporting to the goddess that the time has come. Next, she examines Izel, her hands gentle but firm. She feels Izel's belly, assessing the baby's position with a skill born of long experience. She doesn't just rely on physical touch, she is reading the situation with her entire being, attuning herself to the spiritual currents in the room. This holistic approach is a key part of Aztec medicine, where the physical and the spiritual are inextricably linked. A healer didn't just treat a symptom, they treated the whole person and their relationship with the cosmos. Once her initial assessment is done, the rituals begin in earnest. Exoko prepares a series of warm baths for Izel. The water is infused with specific herbs believed to ease the pain and relax the muscles. as Izel soaks. Exoko begins to speak to her, but her words are not just simple encouragement. She is delivering a formal, oratorical speech, a Cihuateteo or speech of the elders. These were highly structured, poetic speeches for important life events, passed down through generations. "My beloved daughter, my little dove," she might begin, her voice rising and falling in a practiced cadence. "You have now entered the battlefield. You are a warrior facing your enemy. Be brave, be strong, remember the goddesses who watch over you. Do not surrender. Seize the captive, seize the child." She speaks to the baby as well, addressing it as if it were a conscious participant in the struggle. "Come forth, my child. Do not linger in the darkness. Your mother is a warrior, and you must not defeat her. Come into the light." This is her role as a spiritual coach, a drill sergeant for the soul. She is framing the agonizing, messy process of labor within the grand, honorable narrative of battle. Every contraction is a blow struck, every cry of pain a war cry. You notice one of her more unusual tools, a small, smooth river stone. This is a fascinating piece of Aztec medical magical practice. A little-known detail of their birthing customs. The stone is called an Izipitzala blood blower. Exoko holds it in her hand, and in moments of intense pain or when labor stalls, she will blow across the surface of the stone towards Izel's belly. The belief is that her breath, her IHIOTL, a form of soul energy liver, can be projected through the stone to help dislodge the baby and ease its passage. It's a form of sympathetic magic, a tangible attempt to breathe her own strength and vitality into the struggling mother. The family, including you and Yuretsi, are not allowed in the birthing room itself. You wait in the central courtyard, your own world shrunk to the size of this small, enclosed space. The sounds from the room, IZLS low moans, exocourse rhythmic chanting are the only things that matter. Yuretsi paces, his face a mask of tension. The matriarch sits, her hands busy with some mending, but her eyes are fixed on the doorway. The sun begins to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The very colors of Hytistoproticus red, Pyramid and Talikos blue one. The day is ending, and the battle inside that small room is still raging. Exoko has been in there for hours. The initial confidence and calm of her arrival begins to feel like a distant memory. The air in the courtyard grows colder, heavier. The exact nature of these midwives is a topic of some academic interest. The Spanish in their chronicles often portrayed them as wise women, but also as keepers of pagan superstitions. It's a challenge for historians to separate the practical medical knowledge from the ritual. For the Aztecs, there was no separation. Exocos herbal baths were likely effective muscle relaxants, and her calm demeanor a powerful psychological aid. But were these things effective because of their physical properties, or because they were performed within the correct ritual context for Exoko and for Izel's family? The question would be meaningless. The herbs work because the goddesses wish them to work. The ritual is the medicine. And right now, as darkness falls and the sounds from the birthing room become more strained, everyone is praying that the medicine is strong enough. The darkness deepens. The sounds of the city, the distant murmur of the market and the splash of canoes, fade into a soft hum, replaced by the chirping of insects in the courtyard. The only light comes from a single torch flickering near the center of the patio, casting long, dancing shadows that seem to mock the tense stillness of the family. Hours have passed since Exoko entered the birthing room. The short, sharp cries of active labor you'd been hearing have now subsided, replaced by something more worrying, long stretches of silence broken by low, exhausted moans. The battle inside is not going well. Yuretsi has stopped pacing. He now sits on the ground, his back against a cool adobe wall, staring at the closed doorway as if he could will a positive outcome through sheer force of gaze. The matriarch has put down her mending. She is now murmuring her own quiet, desperate prayers, her knuckles white as she clutches a small, smooth stone in her hand. From inside the room, you can just make out the changing tone of Exokos' voice. The formal, encouraging war cries have softened into something more like a pleading negotiation. She is no longer just addressing Isel and the baby, she is speaking directly to the goddesses, her voice urgent. She's bargaining, promising offerings, promising devotion if they will only intervene. This is the point where the midwife's medical knowledge would have been tested to its limits. We know from surviving texts, like the Florentine Codex, that Aztec midwives had a sophisticated understanding of childbirth. They knew how to turn a breech baby in the womb through external massage. They knew which herbs could potentially stimulate contractions and which could help staunch bleeding. A mainstream historical fact is that if all else failed and the mother had already passed, they would perform a post-mortem embryotomy procedure to cut the baby out of the womb. This was done not to save the baby, as it would have already perished, but to ensure the mother, who had captured her captive, could be properly honored as a warrior who had completed her task. But right now, Isel is still alive. The battle is still being fought, and she is losing. The child is stuck. It is what we would now call an obstructed labor, one of the most dangerous and fatal complications of childbirth before the advent of modern surgery. Inside that small, incense-filled room, Isel is floating in a sea of pain and exhaustion. The world has shrunk to the size of her own body, a body that has become a prison. The lines between the physical and spiritual blur. Is the child truly just physically stuck, or is it, as Exoka might whisper, being held back by a malevolent spirit, perhaps one of the Tisamite, that Isel might have accidentally glimpsed? The fear, the pain, and the religious belief all melt into one terrifying reality. You learn of a particularly desperate, and frankly horrifying, folk remedy that was sometimes employed. This is a bit of a weird, dark corner of their medical beliefs. If a woman's labor was prolonged and seemed hopeless, it was sometimes believed to be the result of a curse caused by her own marital infidelity. Her husband would be brought to the door of the birthing room. He would be made to strip off his clothes, and as he stood there, exposed and ashamed, he would have to confess the name of the woman or women with whom he had been unfaithful. The belief was that his confession, his act of profound humiliation, would break the curse and allow the child to be born. Whether this ever actually worked is, of course, impossible to say, but the existence of such a belief shows the immense psychological pressure and the desperate search for any cause, any solution, in the face of such a terrifying, unseemingly random event. There is no indication that this happens here. Cihuateteo remains in the courtyard, a helpless statue of grief. But the very existence of such a custom hangs in the air, a testament to the frantic search for meaning and control in a situation where there is none. The hours crawl by. One by one, the stars appear in the black sky above the courtyard. The moon, a pale sliver, offers little light. The torch sputters and one of the boys replaces it. The cycle of waiting continues. The silence from the room is now the loudest sound you've ever heard. It's a heavy, suffocating blanket. Historians and archaeologists are still trying to piece together the full scope of Aztec medical practices. They analyze skeletal remains for evidence of disease and trauma, and they scrutinize the ambiguous illustrations in the codices. Was there a surgical intervention for a living mother in a situation like this? Could they perform a case, or section to save both mother and child? The overwhelming consensus is no. While they were skilled surgeons in other areas, like setting bones and treating wounds, this kind of invasive abdominal surgery was almost certainly beyond them. The risk of infection and bleeding would have made it a death sentence. So they wait. They wait for a miracle from the goddesses. They wait for so-called herbs and chants and skill to finally work. But as the night wears on, a new feeling begins to settle over the compound, a cold, grim resignation. The hope for a victor is fading. Now they are beginning to prepare themselves for the announcement of a sacrifice. The Manchantian and the Jando is nearing its inevitable, heartbreaking end. The end comes not with a bang, but with a chilling, transformative silence. The low moans from inside the room cease. The urgent murmur of the midwife's prayer stops. For a few heartbeats, the only sound is the chirping of the insects, utterly indifferent to the human tragedy unfolding. The air in the courtyard becomes thick, heavy, unbreathable. Then the doorway darkens. Exoko, the midwife, steps out into the flickering torchlight. Her face, usually a mask of professional calm, is etched with exhaustion and sorrow, but her posture is not one of defeat. It is upright, formal, and imbued with a deep, solemn purpose. She looks at the family, at the anxious faces turned towards her, and she does not weep. Instead, she raises her head to the night sky and lets out a series of sharp, piercing cries. Ye, yo, yo, you, yo, you. It's a shocking alien sound in the quiet grief of the compound. It is not a wail of mourning. It is a war cry, the cry of a warrior who has just taken a captive on the battlefield. By performing this act, Exoko is making a formal, public declaration. Izel, the woman, the wife, the daughter, is gone. In her place, a Mocihuaquetzqui, a valiant woman, has been made. Her struggle is over. Her sacrifice is complete. She has fallen in her glorious battle. The sound hangs in the air, a spiritual banner proclaiming her new status. The family's reaction is a strange and complex tapestry of emotion. You see Cihuateteu's face crumple, the stoic mask finally breaking into raw, silent grief. This is his personal loss, sharp and devastating. The matriarch closes her eyes, tears tracing paths through the dust on her cheeks. But alongside this very human sorrow, there is something else. A flicker of pride, a sense of profound tragic awe. She has been chosen. She has achieved the most honorable death a woman can attain. This is the moment of apotheosis, the core of this belief system. Her agonizing death is not a medical failure or a senseless tragedy. It is a divinely sanctioned sacrifice. She has fed the gods with her life force, just as the warrior on the pyramid steps feeds them with his. Her name will now be spoken with a new reverence. Stories of her courage in her battle will be told and retold. She has become a part of the sacred story of her people. You learn that the child has also perished, the captive never taken. This detail is important. Had the child been born and Izel died moments later, the narrative would be slightly different. But because she died in the act, with the child still inside her, her sacrifice is seen as absolute. The rituals now shift from those of a warrior's funeral. Exoko, her role as midwife now transformed into that of a ceremonial undertaker, directs the proceedings. Izel's body is washed. Her hair, which she would have worn in a simple style befitting a married woman, is now rearranged. It is unbound and allowed to flow freely, a style associated with goddesses and warriors. Her face is painted with yellow and red, the colors of the setting sun she will now accompany. She is dressed in her finest clothes, her most beautifully woven garments. She is not being prepared to be mourned, she is being prepared for her ascension. You observe a specific, lesser-known detail of the funeral preparations. Small pieces of jade, a stone considered more precious than gold, are placed in her mouth and hands. Jade for the Aztecs was a symbol of life, water, and eternity. Placing it with the deceased was meant to provide sustenance and vitality for her soul on its long journey. It's a tender gesture amidst the solemnity, a packed lunch for the afterlife. The family's grief is real and deep, but it's channeled through this rigid, formal structure. There is no uncontrolled wailing, no tearing of clothes and despair. That would be an insult to the honor Izel has just achieved. Their sorrow must be dignified, worthy of a hero's family. This concept of a good death is something that many cultures have, but the Aztec version is particularly stark. Historians who study their worldview often point out that for the Aztecs, how you died was far more important than how you lived. A long life that ended in a simple, quiet death from old age was considered a somewhat neutral, uninteresting fate. Your soul would go to Mictlan, the dark and dreary underworld, a place of 9 challenging levels that you had to navigate over for years. But to die in a way that was divinely marked as a warrior in battle, as a sacrifice on the temple, or as a woman in childbirth that was a ticket to a glorious, sun-drenched afterlife. It was a fast pass, bypassing the grim ordeal of Mictlan entirely. Academics still debate the social function of this belief. Was it a form of psychological comfort, a way to make sense of the high rates of maternal mortality, or was it a form of social control, a way to encourage women to embrace the dangerous duty of procreation for the good of the state? It was likely both. It was a system that simultaneously honored women and instrumentalized their bodies turning their personal agony into a public spectacle of imperial glory. As the first hints of dawn begin to lighten the eastern sky, the preparations are complete. Izel's body lies in state in the center of the courtyard, a fallen warrior adorned for her final journey. But as her family looks upon her, their sorrow is now mixed with a new, urgent fear. Her death was the end of one battle. Now, a new one is about to begin. Her body, now a sacred object, is also a target. The vigil must start. As the sun, the very deity Izel is destined to serve, begins its climb into the sky, a profound transformation occurs. The body lying in the courtyard is no longer just Izel. Her human identity has been burned away by the sacred fire of her sacrifice. She has become a vessel, a seed of the divine. She is now, in essence, a goddess in the making. The family now refers to her by her new title, Mocihuaquetzqui, but they also know that her soul is beginning its journey to become one of the Cihuateteo, the divine women. These are the spirits of women who died in childbirth, a unique and powerful class of supernatural beings. This is the moment of her birth as a goddess, a process as painful and profound as the physical birth she could not complete. The belief is not that she will be a goddess, but that in her death, she already is one. Her physical form, the body that betrayed her in her final hours, is now imbued with a fraction of that divine power. Exoko, the midwife, gathers the family and explains what is to come. Her voice is low and serious. For 4 days, Izel's soul will linger near her body before it ascends to join the sun's retinue. And for those 4 days, her physical remains will be a source of immense supernatural power, a dangerous and coveted treasure. The mainstream understanding of the Cihuateteo is that they were revered figures. They were honored companions of the sun, female counterparts to the fallen warriors. Processions were held in their honor on specific days of the Aztec calendar, and small shrines were built to them at crossroads. They were, in the abstract, figures of immense glory. But as Exoko speaks, you begin to understand the terrifying flip side of this divinity. Power, in the Aztec worldview, is never benign. It is volatile, dangerous, and morally neutral. The power now radiating from Izel's body can be harnessed, stolen, and used for purposes that have nothing to do with honor or reverence. Her body has become a nexus of tonal li. This is a key concept in Aztec thought. Tonal li is a form of life force or spiritual energy centered in the head. It's associated with warmth, the sun, and one's destiny. A person's tonal li could be weakened by fear or immoral acts, and it could leave the body during dreams. The tonal li of a Mocihuaquetzqui like Izel is this energy that others now seek to steal. You learn a strange and specific detail about the perceived nature of these new goddesses. While they were honored, they were also seen as being perpetually angry and tormented. Their death, though glorious, was a source of eternal frustration. They were warriors who had captured a prize but could never truly possess it. This divine rage made them terrifying. It was believed they could inflict diseases, especially seizures and madness, on those who displeased them. They were particularly hostile towards men, seeing them as symbols of the world that had, in a sense, caused their suffering. This duality is confusing. How can a being be both a glorious companion of the sun and a malevolent, disease-spreading spirit? The Aztec mind was perfectly comfortable with this kind of paradox. Their gods were rarely all good or all evil. Tenochtitlan was both the glorious sun that gave life and the bloodthirsty god of war. Taloca brought life-giving rain, but also destructive floods and lightning. The Cihuateteo were no different. They embodied the ultimate female sacrifice, and for that they were honored. But they also embodied the agony and trauma of that death, and for that they were feared. It's a point of ongoing discussion among scholars was the fear aspect of the Cihuateteo later development, or was it always part of the belief? Some argue that the original belief was purely honorific, and the more monstrous, terrifying aspects were emphasized over time, perhaps as a way to control social behavior through fear. Others maintain that the honor and the horror were always two sides of the same coin, a perfect reflection of the Aztec fascination with the violent, creative, destructive forces of the universe. Exoco explains that the power of Izl's body is at its peak right now. Her spirit is close, her eternally radiating like heat from a fire. This power is concentrated in certain parts of her body, her hair, which holds a strong connection to the eternal Li in the head, and most potently, the middle finger of her left hand. The reasons for this specific choice are lost to time, a bizarre and macabre detail that has puzzled anthropologists for years. Perhaps the left side was associated with the west, the direction of the setting sun where the Cihuateteo dwelled. Perhaps the middle finger had some symbolic meaning that we no longer understand. Whatever the reason, this finger is now considered a magical artifact of immense power. As the sun climbs higher, casting the sharp shadows of morning across the courtyard, the reality of the situation sinks in. Izl's body, lying in state, is not just a beloved family member to be mourned. It is a beacon shining in the spiritual darkness, attracting those who crave power. The goddess has been born, and with her birth comes a terrible new responsibility for her family. They must now become the guardians of her divinity, the protectors of her sacred, vulnerable flesh. The birth of the goddess brings with it a terrible, sacred curse. The very thing that makes Izl's death glorious, her newfound divinity, is what now puts her at risk of the ultimate desecration. The power that infuses her remains has turned her body from a vessel of life into a coveted object, a source of potent and dangerous magic. Exoco, the midwife, lays out the grim reality for the men of the family. Cihuateteo, his eyes red-rimmed and hollow, listens alongside Izl's father and brothers. Their grief must now be forged into a weapon. Their sorrow must become vigilance. For nights, Exoco says, her voice low and steady, you must not sleep, you must guard her. They will come for her. One of Izl's younger brothers asks, his voice barely a whisper. The ambitious ones, Exoco replies, her gaze hard. The new warriors, the sorcerers. Those who want a shortcut to power. She explains that the magical properties of Izl's body are now a law. Specifically, the parts believed to hold the most concentrated eternal Li lock of her hair, and the middle finger of her left hand. A warrior who possesses one of these relics believes he will become invincible. A sorcerer believes it will grant him power over others. This is the central, horrifying paradox. In life, a woman's body was a private, sacred space, protected by strict social codes. In her glorious death, it becomes a public resource for the magically ambitious. The honor of her sacrifice does not guarantee the sanctity of her remains. In fact, it's the direct cause of their violation. Her divinity is her curse. You try to wrap your mind around the logic. A young warrior, who dreams of dying his own glorious death on the battlefield to serve the sun, would be willing to desecrate the body of a woman who has achieved the exact same honor. But in the Aztec worldview, power was a tangible commodity. It wasn't about moral consistency, it was about acquisition. The power within Izl's body was a tool, and a warrior would use any tool at his disposal to become more effective in his own sacred duty of capturing enemies for sacrifice. He wouldn't see it as a desecration of a fellow hero, he would see it as absorbing her strength for the good of the empire. This practice reveals a fascinating, and somewhat disturbing, element of Aztec belief about the body. The physical body wasn't just a shell for the soul, it was a container of power that could be partitioned and transferred. This is a common theme in their rituals. When a captive warrior was sacrificed, the warrior who captured him was often entitled to a piece of the victim's body, which he would then ceremonially consume. This wasn't cannibalism for hunger, it was a ritual act of absorbing the victim's strength and courage. The same principle, you realize with a sickening jolt, is being applied to Izl. You learn about the specific uses for her remains, a piece of deeply strange and unsettling magical lore. If a young warrior could manage to hack off the middle finger of her left hand, he would attach it to his shield. It was believed that this grisly talisman had the power to paralyze his enemies on the battlefield. The finger, imbued with the frustrated, divine rage of the Cihuateteo, would magically weigh down the limbs of his opponents, making them easy to capture. Woven into his own, was thought to grant him supernatural courage and blind his foes. It's a gruesome thought, but it gets even stranger. The power of these relics wasn't just for warriors. A common thief, you learn, could use the left forearm of a Mocihuaquetzqui to aid in his nightly work. The belief was that, if he carried the arm into a house, it would put the inhabitants into a deep, unshakable sleep, allowing him to rob them without being caught. The arm of the sacred dead becomes a burglar's skeleton key. It's hard to know exactly how widespread this belief and practice was. The Spanish friars who documented Aztec culture, like Bernardino de Sahagun, recorded these stories with a mixture of anthropological curiosity and Christian horror. They presented them as established facts of Aztec life. However, it's a topic that some modern historians approach with caution. Was this a common, nightly occurrence, or was it a rarer, more folkloric belief, something that people feared but that didn't happen often? The archaeological evidence for this kind of post-mortem mutilation is scarce, but the written accounts are consistent and detailed. The debate continues: were the Spanish exaggerating the barbarism to justify their conquest, or were they accurately recording a practice that, due to its illicit and hidden nature, simply didn't leave much physical evidence behind? Regardless of the frequency, the fear was real. For Yuretsi and his family, the threat is not academic. It is imminent. The honor they feel for Izel is now locked in a desperate struggle with the horror of what could happen to her. Her final resting place is not yet the earth, it is this contested space in the center of the courtyard. As Exoko finishes her instructions, the men begin to gather their weapons. Not the grand Mocihuaquetzqui who tell the obsidian-bladed clubs of war, but sturdy wooden staves and farming tools that can serve as cudgels. Their faces are set, a mixture of grief, exhaustion, and grim determination. They are no longer just mourners, they are gods. Their fight is not for the glory of the sun or the expansion of the empire. It is a small, personal, and desperate battle to protect the body of the woman they loved from the sacred curse that came with her death. The preparations for the vigil begin immediately, a grim and purposeful ballet in the rapidly fading light of dusk. The profound sorrow of the morning has now been channeled into a practical, urgent task. There is no time for quiet reflection. The enemy is already gathering in the shadows of the mind, if not yet in the alleyways of the city. Yuretsi, his facest only mask, takes charge. He is no longer just the grieving husband, he is the commander of a tiny, desperate garrison. He directs his brothers-in-law and ISEL's father, their movement swift and economical. The first step is to secure the courtyard. The main gate leading out of the compound is barred with a heavy wooden beam. Any smaller entrances are blocked with whatever is at hand: benches, stacks of firewood. Heavy pottery is being turned into a fortress. You watch as they arm themselves. These are not professional soldiers from the elite Jaguar or Eagle warrior societies. They are farmers, artisans, ordinary men. Their weapons are not the finely crafted instruments of war, but the tools of their daily lives. A heavy wooden digging stick, its end fire-hardened to a sharp point, becomes a spear. A sturdy yoke for carrying water jugs becomes a defensive shield. Yuretsi himself clutches a heavy club, normally used for breaking up clumps of earth. The scene is a stark reminder of the reality of their situation: a civilian family forced into a military role by a bizarre intersection of faith and fear. The women of the household have their own crucial part to play. They will be the logistical support for this four-day siege. The matriarch directs the preparation of food, simple, nourishing fare that can be eaten quickly, like toasted amaranth cakes and roasted maize. They fill every available clay pot with water. Most importantly, they prepare the fuel for the fires. A large bonfire is built in the center of the courtyard, near where Izel's body lies in state. Smaller braziers are placed at the corners of the compound. Light is their greatest ally against the things that lurk in the dark. The plan is to keep the courtyard illuminated for 4 consecutive nights, leaving no shadows for a thief to hide in. Izel's body, adorned in her finest clothes, remains the silent center of this storm of activity. She is surrounded by offerings, flowers, plates of food for her spirit, and small clay bowls of water. The flickering firelight catches the jade in her mouth, making it gleam with an eerie green light. She is both the person they are protecting and the reason they are in danger, the beloved family member and the holy relic. You notice a small, almost hidden ritual taking place. Exoko, the midwife, takes a sharp obsidian bladed tool she might have used for cutting an umbilical cord and makes a tiny, symbolic cut on the arm of each male guard. It's a fascinating, lesser-known part of the protective rites. This act of letting a single drop of blood is a form of oath, a blood pact binding them to their duty. It's a way of formally declaring their commitment, not just to their family, but to the cosmos. They are marking themselves as sacred guardians entering into a state of ritual readiness. This whole process, the arming of civilians, the fortification of a domestic space, the all-night vigil, is a strange inversion of the normal Aztec order. This is a society obsessed with roles and specialization. Warriors fight, priests perform rituals, farmers farm. But here, in the face of this unique threat, those lines blur. The family home becomes a battleground, and the family members become soldiers. The tension of this preparation raises a question that historians sometimes ponder: how did the state view this? The Aztec Empire was a highly centralized, authoritarian society. A group of men, armed and holding a 4-day vigil, could potentially be seen as a form of unsanctioned militia. Did the state support this practice, seeing it as a necessary part of the Cihuateteo rituals, or did they turn a blind eye, treating it as a private family matter? Some scholars suggest that the practice was so deeply ingrained in the religious and social fabric that it was simply accepted as the proper way to handle the death of Mocihuaquetzqui. The family was not just protecting its own, it was fulfilling a recognized religious duty, one that fell outside the normal jurisdiction of the state's military apparatus. The Cowpolai, the neighborhood clan, would have recognized and respected the vigil, creating a protective social buffer around the grieving, guarding family. As night falls completely, the preparations are finished. The fire in the center of the courtyard crackles, spitting sparks into the darkness. The men take up their positions, forming a loose circle around Izel's body. Their faces, illuminated by the flames, are grim and determined. Yuretsi stands at the head of his wife's spear, his club held tight in his hands. He is a sentinel guarding a goddess. The compound falls silent, but it's a different kind of silence now. It's not the silence of grief, but the taut, humming silence of anticipation. Every rustle of leaves outside the walls, every distant dog bark, every creak of the thatched roofs becomes a potential threat. They are ready. They are waiting for the rustle in the dark, for the first sign of the lurking shadows who believe that Izel's sacred body is their key to power. The fire in the courtyard is a small, defiant sun in the vast darkness of the Tenochtitlan night. You sit with the guards, a silent observer in their circle of light. The initial adrenaline of preparation has faded, replaced by a deep, weary vigilance. The men don't speak much, they listen, and in the silence, you begin to understand who they are listening for. Who are these ambitious ones? These lurking shadows? They are not ghouls or demons from the underworld. They are people you might see every day in the market. They are the city's youth, filled with the fire of ambition and the anxieties of proving their worth. The primary culprits are the Childbirth boys. The Childbirth, or House of Youth, was the school where the sons of commoners received their education. But this wasn't about reading and writing. That was for the nobles at the more exclusive Comicak schools. The Childbirth was, first and foremost, a military's boys lived there, learning the arts of war, enduring harsh discipline, and dreaming of the day they would capture their first prisoner on the battlefield. Capturing a prisoner was the single most important milestone in a young man's life. It was the gateway to status, to better clothing, to a share of tribute, and to respect. A man who failed to capture an enemy after several campaigns was a subject of ridicule, a failure. The pressure was immense. Now, imagine you are one of these boys. You're strong, you're young, but maybe you're not the quickest or the most skilled. You've been on one campaign and came back empty-handed, the jeers of your peers ringing in your ears. You are desperate. Then word spreads through the Cowpolai: a woman has died in childbirth. Mocihuaquetzqui, her body, for nights, is a source of immense power, a talisman that promises to make you brave, to make your enemies weak. It's a shortcut. A cheat code in the brutal game of social advancement. This is a core part of their motivation. It's not necessarily born of malice towards the family or disrespect for the dead woman. In their minds, it is a pragmatic, if risky, act of magical empowerment. Then there are the other shadows, the ones who operate outside the warrior's code. These are the sorcerers, the practitioners of the darker side of Aztec magic. They were known as Nahual. I was a shamanistic figure, believed to have the power to shape-shift, often into an animal like a jaguar or a dog. They could cast spells, cure diseases, and also inflict them. While some were respected healers, others were feared as malevolent curse casters. The body of a Mocihuaquetzqui would be a treasure trove for a Nahual. The power contained within it could be used for their own ends, to enhance their shapeshift abilities, to create powerful curses, or to brew potent magical concoctions. Unlike the young warrior, the sorcerer's motives are more personal, more anarchic. They seek power not for the glory of the state, but for themselves. You learn a strange and creepy detail about how these sorcerers were perceived. It was believed that a true Nahual was born on a specific, unlucky day in the Aztec calendar, and it was said that some were born without any bones in their body, able to slip through the smallest cracks and keyholes like smoke. This is, of course, folklore, but it paints a picture of the kind of slippery, unsettling figures the family now fears. They aren't just guarding against a frontal assault by a desperate teenager, they are guarding against a supernatural home invasion. The very existence of these lurking figures, both the warriors and the sorcerers, highlights a fundamental tension within Aztec society, a tension that historians find fascinating. There was the official state-sanctioned religion of the pyramids and the grand ceremonies, but underneath it, there was a rich, chaotic and amoral world of folk magic, personal ambition, and superstition. The state demanded order, duty, and sacrifice for the collective. Whether a young warrior or a reclusive sorcerer was always looking for an edge, a way to navigate the rigid system for their own benefit. The hunt for the body of a Mocihuaquetzqui happens right at the messy intersection of these two worlds. Is the idea of the Nahual a historical reality or a myth? Scholars are divided. Some believe that there were indeed individuals who practiced these shamanistic arts, forming a kind of magical underworld. Others argue that Nahual was more of a social label, a term used to accuse and persecute people who were social outcasts, nonconformists, or who simply had an uncanny knack for something. The witch hunts of Europe have a parallel here. The distinction is meaningless. The threat feels real. A twig snaps in the alleyway beyond the compound wall. Instantly, the men are on their feet, clubs raised. Cihuateteo moves to the gate, pressing his ear against the wood, listening. The firelight glints off the sweat on his brow. The shadows thrown by the fire suddenly seem to coalesce, forming menacing, shifting shapes. Are they just tricks of the light, or are they the Nahual testing the defenses, waiting for the slightest lapse in concentration? The night is long, and the true enemy is not just flesh and blood, but the fear of what the darkness might hold. The fire crackles, a small circle of warmth and light against the oppressive dark. In the tense silence, your mind fixates on the grim purpose of this potential theft. It's not just about stealing a body part, it's about the transformation of that part into a tool, a talisman. You begin to understand the strange and powerful object biography of these stolen relics. Let's imagine for a moment that a young warrior, will call him Mixcoatl or Cloud Serpent, is successful. HES managed to slip past the guards, perhaps during a moment of exhausted inattention in the pre-dawn hours of the third night. With a quick, brutal hack of his obsidian blade, he severs the middle finger from Izel's left hand. He wraps it in a piece of cloth and vanishes back into the darkness, his heart pounding with a mixture of terror and triumph. What happens next? He doesn't just put it in his pocket. The finger is not yet a talisman. It is still a piece of a corpse, run spiritually volatile. It needs to be prepared. This is where the practical magic comes in, a process that is part craft, part ritual. Mixcoatl would take the finger back to a hidden place, perhaps his small quarters in the Telpok. He would likely smoke it over a fire of copal incense and sacred herbs. This is not just to preserve it, but to ritually cleanse it and fully awaken its magical properties. As he works, he would be chanting, speaking to the object, telling it what he wants it to do. He would be addressing the angry, frustrated spirit of the Mocihuaquetzqui that he believes now resides within it, trying to bend its power to his will. Paralyze my enemies, he might murmur. Make their shields heavy. Make their arms weak. Aid me in my sacred duty. Once prepared, he would secure it to his kaim or by his shield. The shield is his primary defensive tool, his barrier against the enemy's weapons. By attaching the finger, he is turning his defense into a form of attack. The shield now projects an aura of magical dread. This belief in the power of a specific body part to affect an enemy is a core component of Mesoamerican sympathetic magic. The logic is that the relic contains the essence of the dead woman's struggle, the paralysis of her own body during the obstructed labor. By harnessing this, the warrior hopes to project that same paralysis onto his foes. It's a chillingly direct and literal application of magical thinking. Now consider the warrior's hair. This was an even more potent symbol of tonal li, the life force centered in the head. If Mocihuaquetzqui had managed to cut a thick lock of Izel's hair instead, the preparation would be different. He would carefully braid it, perhaps weaving it together with brightly colored feathers or cotton threads. He might then braid this magical cord directly into his own long hair, which warriors wore with great pride. This act of weaving the hair of the living is incredibly intimate and symbolic. He is literally merging her strengths, her tonal li with his own. The desired effect is also different. The hair is not meant to paralyze the enemy, but to bolster the warrior himself. It is believed to grant him a kind of divine madness, a battle fury that makes him fearless and terrifying to behold. It is also thought to have the power to, as a law, confuse his opponents, making his movements seem faster and more unpredictable. This brings us to a wonderfully strange and specific piece of Aztec military lore that most people have never heard of. The most elite warriors, the veterans who had captured many prisoners, were known as Otu-Nt or Otu-Mais, and eventually Quachek the Shorn Ones. The Quachek were instantly recognizable by their hairstyle. They shaved their entire heads except for a crest of hair running down the middle, like a mohawk, and a single long braid over their left ear. They painted their faces in dramatic colors and were known for their berserker-like ferocity. They took oaths to never retreat in battle. Now, imagine a young warrior aspiring to this level. Weaving the hair of a Mocihuaquetzqui into his own is like a magical steroid, a way to tap into the kind of reckless, sacred fury that defined these elite fighters. The very idea of these talismans raises a fascinating question for historians and archaeologists. Did they work? Of course not in a literal magical sense. But what about psychologically? This is a point of serious academic consideration. A young, frightened warrior like Mocihuaquetzqui, heading into his first real battle, is terrified. But if he has this powerful talisman, this finger on his shield, he believes he is protected. He believes he is protected. This belief could give him the crucial edge of confidence he needs to act decisively, to rush forward when he might otherwise have hesitated. His own confidence could, in turn, intimidate his opponent. In this sense, the magic was real. It was a powerful placebo, a psychological force multiplier that could genuinely influence the outcome of a skirmish. So, as you stand guard in the flickering firelight, you're not just protecting a body from being mutilated. You are protecting the enemy from being empowered. You are preventing a young man like Mocihuaquetzqui from gaining the unearned confidence that could lead him to capture and kill someone else's son or husband on a future battlefield. The vigil in this small, quiet courtyard has ripples that extend all the way to the violent, bloody fields of war. The fate of Izel's finger is tied to the fate of men she will never know. The first night is the longest. The shock and the adrenaline have worn off, leaving behind a bone-deep weariness and a raw, exposed grief. The fire, which had seemed a comforting bastion of light, now feels like a solitary island in an infinite ocean of darkness. You take your turn on watch with Cihuateteo. He hasn't spoken more than a few words since the vigil began. He just stands there, a silhouette against the flames, his gaze fixed on the shadows pooling at the edges of the courtyard. His grief is a tangible thing, a heavy cloak that seems to absorb the light and sound around him. This is his first night as a widower, a title he never expected to hold. The sounds of the sleeping city are a low murmur. A dog barks in the distance, and Cihuateteu's head snaps towards the sound. his knuckles white on the handle of his club. A gust of wind rustles the thatched roof, and every man in the courtyard flinches, their eyes scanning the darkness. The tension is exhausting, a constant, low-grade hum of anxiety that frays the nerve. To stay awake, to fight off the suffocating pull of sleep, the men begin to talk, not about the horror of their task, but about Izel. Izel's father, a quiet, gentle man, begins to tell a story about her as a little girl, how she once tried to help him plant maize by burying her favorite little clay doll in the China MPA, hoping it would grow. A small, sad smile touches his lips. One of her brothers recalls her uncanny skill at the loom, how she could weave patterns that seemed to dance and dribble. These stories are a shield. They are a way of reclaiming her. In the face of this threat that seeks to reduce her to a magical object, a collection of powerful parts, they are remembering the whole person. They are rebuilding her in their memories, speaking her back into existence as a daughter, a sister, or wife. Cihuateteo remains silent, but you can see him listening, his rigid posture softening just a fraction. This is the other unstated purpose of the vigil. It is a funeral wake, a 4-day Shiva, a communal processing of loss. As the night deepens, you think about the mainstream historical image of the stoic Aztec warrior, unflinching in the face of death. But what you are witnessing here is the quiet, unglamorous reality of courage. It's not the explosive bravery of the battlefield. It's the endurance of staying awake when your body screams for sleep. It's the strength to sit with your grief without letting it consume you. It's the quiet determination to protect the dignity of someone you love. Suddenly, a new sound cuts through the night. It's coming from outside the main gate. A soft, rhythmic scraping. SC rich. SC rich. Scrape. Instantly, the stories cease. The men are on their feet, their makeshift weapons held ready. Cihuateteo moves to the gate like a shadow, pressing his ear against the heavy wood. The scraping stops. Silence. The men exchange nervous glances at the fire. Was it just an animal, stray dog scratching at the gate, or was it something else? Was it a test, someone checking the gate, seeing if it was barred, seeing if the guards were alert? This brings up a fascinating, and somewhat macabre, little detail of Aztec thievery and infiltration. While the Nahuatl sorcerers were feared for their supposed supernatural abilities, common thieves had a range of practical and very strange techniques. One of them involved the use of ground-up, dried seeds of the stramonium plant, known to the Aztecs as Toloetzi, and it's a powerful hallucinogen and delirium tea. A thief might blow a small amount of this powder through a crack in a door or window, hoping the inhabitants would breathe it in and fall into a confused, stuporous sleep. Whether this was effective or just part of the folklore of fear is debatable, but the belief in such methods was real. Are the men just guarding against a physical assault, or also against this kind of subtle magical chemical warfare? The silence stretches on. The scraping sound does not return. The tension slowly, agonizingly recedes. But the atmosphere has changed. The threat is no longer an abstract concept. It has a sound. It has a presence just beyond the wall. The would-be thieves are out there. They are real, and they are waiting. The debate over the historicity of these Nike raids is a lively one among specialists. Some historians, relying on the dramatic accounts of the Spanish chroniclers, paint a picture of pitched battles, of families fighting off dozens of young warriors every night. Others take a more conservative view, suggesting such direct confrontations were likely rare. They argue that the primary function of the vigil was deterrent. The fire, the armed guards, the barred gate was all a clear signal to any would-be thief that this family was prepared, that this would not be an easy prize. A young warrior, seeking a magical edge, was probably not looking for a bloody brawl with a grieving, desperate family. He was looking for an easy opportunity. The vigil was designed to ensure that no such opportunity arose. As the first faint hint of grey appears on the eastern horizon, a collective, unspoken sigh of relief passes through the guards. They have made it through the first night. The rising sun, the very deity that Izl's spirit will one day serve, is their ally. The ghouls and shadows of the night, both real and imagined, recede with the darkness, but they all know this is just a temporary reprieve. 3 more nights remain. The second and third nights melt into a weary, hallucinatory blur. Sleep deprivation begins to take its toll, making the flickering firelight play tricks on the eyes. A stack of firewood can momentarily look like a crouching figure. The wind whistling through a crack in the adobe wall can sound like a human whisper. The real enemy now is not just the thief in the alley, but the exhaustion that dulls the senses and invites mistakes. The men take turns sleeping in short, fitful bursts, but no one truly rests. Even in sleep, their bodies are coiled with tension. During the day, the compound is a strange bubble of altered reality. The normal rhythms of life are suspended. The women move quietly, bringing food and water, their faces etched with a shared silent anxiety. The city bustles on outside the walls, but inside this small fortress, time is measured only by the sun's slow arc across the sky, bringing them closer to the next stretch of darkness. It's on the third night, often considered the most dangerous as both guards and thieves grow more desperate, that the confrontation happens. It's not a dramatic, pitched battle. It's something far more unnerving: a silent, psychological war. The fire has been fed and is burning brightly. Cihuateteo is on watch, pacing slowly around the bier. You are sitting with his father-in-law, trying to stay awake by focusing on the intricate patterns of the flames. Suddenly, a small object arcs over the wall and lands with a soft thud in the dust of the courtyard, not far from the fire. It's a rock, no bigger than a fist. Instantly, everyone is awake, weapons raised, but there's no sound of attack, no war cry. Just silence. The rock sits there, a mundane object infused with menace. What is it? A signal, a distraction? Then another rock lands, this time closer to the men. And a third, over on the other side of the courtyard. It's a probing attack, a test of nerves. The thieves are out there, hidden in the darkness of the narrow alleyways that surround the compound. They are invisible, but their presence is undeniable. They are trying to draw the guards out, to make them panic, to create a vulnerability. Cihuateteo shouts into the darkness. "We are here, we are watching. Go or face the wrath of the gods for disturbing the honored dead." His voice is strong, but you can hear the tremor of exhaustion and fury beneath it. His challenge is met with silence. The rain of stones stops as suddenly as it began. This silent confrontation is a perfect example of the psychological nature of this conflict. It also touches upon a strange and specific legal and social aspect of Aztec society. What would happen if the guards caught a thief? The official punishment for serious theft could be severe, even death. But this situation is unique. The thief is not just a common criminal, he is often a young warrior from the same cow pool. This isn't a crime against a stranger, it's an internal conflict within the community. Historians who have studied Aztec law believe that many such disputes were handled at the local, Calpolan level, rather than by the imperial courts. If Cihuateteo and his family were to catch a young warrior, it's unlikely they would drag him before the city judges. This would bring shame not only upon the boy and his family but upon the entire neighborhood. It's more likely that a form of informal, community-based justice would be applied, perhaps forced to make a public apology or pay restitution to the family in the form of goods or labor. The goal would be to restore social harmony rather than to apply the full, brutal force of the law. This places the guards in a difficult position. They need to be aggressive enough to deter the thieves, but they also know that causing serious injury or death to a neighbor's son could create a whole new set of devastating social problems. They are not just guards, they are negotiators in a high-stakes social drama. The silence outside the walls stretches on, thick and heavy. The men remain in their defensive positions, their eyes scanning the tops of the walls. Then, a new sound begins. A low, rhythmic chanting from somewhere in the darkness. It's not the formal, priestly nahuatl of the temples. It's rougher, more guttural. This is the Nahuatl move. He is not trying to break in physically. He is launching a magical assault. The words are indistinct, but the intent is clear. He is trying to invoke fear to weaken the will of the gods, to make them sleepy or confused. He is trying to fight magic with magic. In response, Izel's mother, the matriarch, steps forward to the edge of the firelight. She begins her own counter-chant, her voice clear and strong. She is not a sorceress, but she is a keeper of the family's spiritual strength. She calls upon the protective spirits of the hearth, upon the honor of herd altars sacrifice, and upon the sun god Histoplutic to shield them from this evil. What you are witnessing is a duel of wills, a battle fought with words and faith across the adobe wall. It's a scene that would never be recorded in the grand histories of the Empire, but it is the very essence of their lived spiritual reality. The mainstream history focuses on the pyramids, but here, in this dark courtyard, a grieving mother becomes a high priestess, defending her family with the power of her own devotion. The sorcerer's chanting eventually fades away, defeated by the old woman's unyielding faith or perhaps just by a lack of results. The rest of the night causes intense, watchful silence. The silent confrontation is over. The family has held. They did not succumb to fear or distraction. They have proven that their will to protect is stronger than the thieves' will to desecrate. But the cost is clear on their faces, the hollowed out, haunted look of people who have been pushed to the very edge of their strength. On the fourth and final day, a strange calm settles over the compound. The exhaustion is profound, but it's mixed with a sense of grim accomplishment. They have held the line, one more night. As the sun sets for the last time on their vigil, the conversation turns inward. One of the younger boys, huddled by the fire, asks the question that has been hanging in the air. Why is her body so powerful? Izel's father, his face illuminated by the fire, takes a deep breath. He begins to explain, not with the formal rhetoric of a priest, but with the simple, earthy metaphors of a farmer. He tries to unravel the mystery of the body's magic. Think of a maize seed, he says. It is a small, hard thing. You can hold it in your hand. But inside it, there is the memory of the sun and the rain. There is the promise of a tall stalk and many cobs. The power is hidden inside. Izel's body is like that now. Her life, her struggle, her sacrifice, all that energy is packed into her, like the promise inside the seed. This is the essence of the Aztec understanding of the body. It wasn't just a machine of flesh and bone. It was a repository of experience, a container of sacred energies that were constantly in flux. This is a core tenet of their worldview, a concept that permeates every aspect of their medicine, religion, and daily life. He goes on to explain the different kinds of soul stuff that they believe inhabit a person. He speaks again of the tonal li, the life force in the head, the gift of the sun, which governs your warmth, your growth, and your destiny. This is the energy the young warriors are after, the heat of Izel's valor. But then he describes the other two souls, a lesser known but equally important part of their spiritual anatomy. There is the Tyoia, which resides in the heart. This is the soul that contains your memories, your personality, your emotions. This is the part of you that is truly you. It is the Tyoia that journeys to the afterlife in Izel's case, to accompany the sun. So, the men are not guiding her personality or her memory. That has already begun its journey. The third soul is the Cihuateteo located in the liver. This is a more volatile, mysterious energy. It's associated with breath, passion, and vitality, but also with negative emotions like envy and anger. It's a luminous, gas-like energy that can be projected out of the body, often unintentionally, to affect others. When someone has a strong, unsettling presence, the Aztecs might say they have a powerful Cihuateteo, the malevolent sorcerer. The Nohuel is a master of consciously directing his Cihuateteo to cause harm. This is the source of the paradox. Izelsteyoi, her noble heart soul, is on its way to glory. But her body, left behind, is still charged with residual tonal li courage energy and, crucially, with a powerful, frustrated by Cihuateteo passion rage energy. Her body is like a spiritual battery, leaking a dangerous, chaotic energy. The thieves want the tonal li, but they risk being contaminated by the untamed Cihuateteo. This complex, three-soul system is a uniquely Mesoamerican concept, and it's a topic of endless fascination and debate for anthropologists. Where did these ideas come from? How did they interact? The Spanish friars who first recorded these beliefs struggled to fit them into their own Christian framework of a single, indivisible soul, often mistranslating and oversimplifying the concepts. For a long time, Western scholarship overlooked the complexity of this system. It's only in more recent decades that researchers, by carefully rereading the original Nahuatl texts, have begun to appreciate the nuance of this spiritual physiology. The debate today often centers on the eye. Cihuateteo, was it always seen as a negative, dangerous force, or did it also have a positive, life-giving aspect? The texts are ambiguous. The father's explanation brings a new understanding to the gods. They are not just protecting flesh and bone from desecration. They are standing guard over a volatile nexus of spiritual energies. They are containing a potential magical meltdown. Their vigil is a work of community sanitation, preventing a dangerous spiritual substance from leaking out into the world where it could be misused. This also explains the fears surrounding the Cihuateteo when they return to Earth. It is their Cihuateteo, their untamed breath soul, full of the rage and frustration of their death, that haunts the crossroads. It's the part of them that can lash out and cause sickness. Their noble heart souls, their Cihuateteo, are at peace, traveling with the sun, but the messy, emotional baggage of their Cihuateteo remains a threat to the living. As the old man finishes his explanation, the first light of the fourth dawn begins to break. The final watch is ending. The period of danger is almost over. By sunrise, the spiritual energies in Iz's body will have dissipated, her tonally fully withdrawn, her Cihuateteo stabilized. The magical charge will be gone. The seed will have become just a seed again. Her body will no longer be a source of power, no longer a talisman. It will finally simply be the vessel that carried the woman they loved. The mystery of her body's magic will fade with the morning mist, leaving only the mundane, human task of burial. The sunrise on the fifth day feels different. It's not a reprieve, it's a conclusion. The air in the courtyard, so long thick with tension and fear, is now still and quiet. The vigil is over. The men, hollow-eyed and moving like ancient trees, slowly lower their weapons. The fortress is dismantled, the heavy bar lifted from the gate. The compound opens itself back up to the world. They were successful. Izel's body is whole, untouched. The family has withstood the shadows. Their grief and exhaustion a strong enough shield. A wave of profound, weary relief washes over everyone. Yuretsi walks to the bier and kneels, finally allowing himself a moment of pure, uninterrupted grief. He gently touches his wife's skulled hand, no longer a sacred relic to be guarded, but simply the hand of the woman he has lost. The final phase of the funeral rites can now begin. The community, which had kept its respectful distance during the vigil, now re-enters the family's life. Neighbors from the Kalpolai arrive, bringing food and, more importantly, their shared presence. The isolation of the last 4 days is over. The family's private struggle now flows back into the communal life of the city. The body is prepared for its final journey. It is carefully wrapped in layers of fine cotton cloth, creating a tight, secure bundle. This is the Tl'Aqui, or sacred bundle. For the Aztecs, the bundle was a potent symbolic object, representing the contained essence of a person or a god. This is a mainstream archaeological fact. These mummy bundles are some of the most significant finds in central Mexican archaeology, providing invaluable information about burial customs. Along with the jade placed in her mouth, other small, personal items are wrapped within the layers of cloth. A miniature weaving baton to honor her skill. A small, intricately decorated pot, perhaps one she had made or particularly loved. These are not grand treasures, but small, intimate tokens of her life, a final connection to her earthly existence. The burial itself is a simple, solemn affair. Because she is a Mocihuaquetzqui, she is not buried in a common plot. She is afforded a special honor. Her grave is dug at a crossroads on the outskirts of the Kalpolai. The crossroads, or Temecpalco, is a place of immense spiritual significance. It is a liminal space, a place that is neither here nor there, a gateway between worlds. It is the place where the Cihuateteo are believed to gather when they descend to Earth. The family is placing her directly in the path of her new divine sisters. It is a final act of delivering her to her destiny. There is no grand monument erected. A simple mound of earth, perhaps marked with stones, is her only memorial. The Aztecs did not share the Egyptian obsession with permanent, monumental tombs for their dead. Their focus was on the journey of the soul, not the preservation of the physical legacy. As the family fills the grave, you observe a small, easily missed detail, a piece of folk belief that speaks volumes. After the last handful of earth is thrown, the matriarch takes a broom and meticulously sweeps the entire area around the grave. This isn't for cleanliness. It is a ritual act of purification, of sweeping away any lingering malevolent influences that might have been attracted by the death. It is a way of closing the spiritual book on this chapter, ensuring that the connection between the dead and the living is clean and proper. With the burial complete, a new phase of mourning begins. The family will observe a period of 80 days of mourning, marked by ritual weeping, offerings, and prayers. Life will slowly, painfully, begin to return to normal. The men will go back to the fields, Yaretsi back to his mosaics. The women will once again grind the corn at dawn. The sound of their work will fill the compound, a testament to the relentless, life-affirming rhythm of the everyday. But the story is not over. The family has laid her body to rest, but her spirit is just beginning its true journey. They have guarded her physical form from desecration, but now they must learn to live with her new divine, and sometimes terrifying presence. They have protected the goddess, now they must learn to fear her. The question of these burial practices still holds some puzzles for archaeologists. While the chronicles describe the crossroads burials for Cihuateteo, finding definitive archaeological proof is difficult. A simple burial at an ancient crossroads is hard to identify and even harder to definitively link to a woman who died in childbirth thousands of years later. Scholars debate whether this was a universal practice or an ideal described in the codices that wasn't always followed. Was it reserved for the wives of nobles, or was it a practice common to all classes? The evidence is fragmentary, leaving us with a picture that is powerful in its literary description but frustratingly elusive on the ground. As you leave the crossroads, the sun is high in the sky. The family walks back towards their home, their shoulders a little lighter, but their faces still etched with loss. They have done their duty. They have given Isel her final rest, but they know that on certain nights, at certain times of the year, she will walk this path again, no longer as Isel, but as a goddess, a rustling in the darkness, a feared and honored shadow at the edge of their world. Now that her body is safely in the earth, you can finally turn your thoughts to her soul, her Yolia. Where is it now? The family's fears and struggles were focused on the physical realm. But Izel's true journey has been happening all along, in a world beyond their sight. According to the grand cosmic map of the Aztecs, her soul is not descending into the dreary underworld of Mictlan. She has bypassed the grim, 9-level obstacle course entirely. Her sacrifice has earned her a place in the highest heavens, the celestial realm of the sun. She has arrived at a place they call Tenochtitlan, the House of the Sun. Specifically, she has been taken to the Western Paradise, a realm known as Cihuateteo, the place of women. This is the domain of the Cihuateteo. Imagine a garden eternally bathed in the warm, golden light of the late afternoon. The air is filled with the scent of celestial flowers and the sound of hummingbirds, the sacred animal of Tenochtitlan. Here, there is no pain, no struggle, no fear. It is a place of honor and joyful service. Upon her arrival, Izel's soul is greeted by the legions of other Mocihuaquetzqui who came before her. They are no longer painted and adorned for a funeral. They are radiant beings, their unbound hair flowing like dark rivers. They welcome her as a sister, a fellow warrior who has proven her valor. She has joined their sacred company. Her duty, and her honor, for the next 3 years, is to be one of the bearers of the sun. This is the mainstream, well-documented belief about the Aztec afterlife for both fallen warriors and women who died in childbirth. The warriors who died in battle, their souls residing in the Eastern Paradise, had the task of carrying the sun on a golden litter from its rising point to its zenith at noon. They would accompany it with war cries and the mock clash of weapons, a joyful, celestial battle. At midday, exactly at the peak of the sky, the warriors would hand over their sacred duty. It was here, at the celestial zenith, that the Cihuateteo would take over. They would place the sun on their own litter and begin the journey down the western slope of the sky. Their procession was not one of war cries, but of joyful songs and the rattling of looms. They were weaving the beautiful tapestry of the sunset. So every afternoon as you watch the sun dip towards the horizon, painting the sky with fiery colors, you are witnessing the work of Izelle and her divine sisters. They are the ones guiding it safely to the gates of the underworld, ensuring it does not fall from the sky or lose its way. It is a task of immense cosmic importance, and it is their exclusive privilege. This vision of the afterlife reveals something profound about the Aztec sense of balance and duality. The cosmos is a shared responsibility between the masculine and the feminine. The warriors and the birth mothers, the two parallel forms of sacrifice, are given parallel, complementary roles in the afterlife. The men govern the morning sun, the women the afternoon. It is a perfect, poetic symmetry. But even in this paradise, there's a strange, less discussed detail. What did these spirits do when they weren't carrying the sun? The souls of the male warriors were said to spend their time in mock battles and feasting. After there, for years of service, they would return to Earth, reincarnated as hummingbirds and other brightly colored birds, destined to fly among the flowers and sip nectar for eternity. A beautiful fate. The fate of the sea, Cihuateteo after their 4 years of service is more ambiguous and, frankly, a bit of a step down. They do not get to be reincarnated as beautiful birds. Instead, they are given permission to descend to Earth on specific days of the year to haunt the crossroads. Their eternal reward, it seems, is to become feared spiriti, has led some scholars to question the supposed equality of the sacrifice. Is this a true reflection of Aztec belief, or is it a bias in the Spanish sources, written by men in a patriarchal society who might have unconsciously downplayed the ultimate glory of the female spirits? This remains a point of academic debate, an unresolved question in the study of Aztec gender roles and religion. For now, though, Izelle is at peace in the House of the Sun. Her family on Earth takes comfort in this image. When they look at the setting sun, they don't just see a celestial body. They see their daughter, their wife, their sister engaged in her sacred work. They can imagine her among the flowers, her song joining the chorus that lulls the sun to sleep. This belief provides a powerful and necessary consolation. It transforms their personal tragedy into a cosmic triumph. The woman they lost is now guardian of the world. Her last agonizing breaths on a reed mat in a small, dark room have been transformed into an eternity of service in a sun-drenched paradise. The story of her death has become a story of her eternal, glorious life. It is a beautiful, comforting lie or a profound spiritual truth, depending on your perspective. It is everything. It allows them to heal, to find meaning in their loss, and to look at the sunset not with sadness, but with a deep and abiding sense of pride. For years pass. In the compound, life has found its new rhythm. Cihuateteo has not remarried. He channels his energy into his mosaic work, his art becoming more intricate, more beautiful, as if H.E.S. trying to capture the colors of the Western paradise where he imagines Izelle dwells. The family speaks of her often, always with reverence, a beloved ancestor who is now a goddess. The sharp edges of their grief have been worn smooth by time, leaving a quiet, enduring pride. But today the atmosphere in the city is different. There's a subtle undercurrent of fear, a nervous energy that you haven't felt since the days of the vigil. You see people hurrying home before dusk, parents pulling their children close. You see small, protective charms made of herbs and obsidian being hung over doorways. You learn that this is one of the 5 specific days in the 260-day Aztec ritual calendar that are dedicated to the sea. Cihuateteo, these are the days when they are permitted to descend from their celestial paradise and return to the earth. The days are named 1 deer, 1 rain, 1 monkey, 1 house, and 1 eagle. Today is 1 monkey. The goddess is coming home for a visit, and nobody is happy about it. This is the great, jarring paradox of this belief system. The honored companions of the sun, the glorious spirits living in a flowery paradise, are transformed into terrifying ghouls the moment they touch the earth. The same beings who are a source of immense family pride are also a source of public terror. As dusk approaches, the city seems to hold its breath. The bustling markets close early. The canals, usually teeming with canoe traffic, become quiet and still. The crossroads, normally busy intersections of human activity, are abandoned. They are now the territory of the goddesses. The belief is that the Cihuateteo descend in groups, sweeping through the night. They are depicted in the codices not as the radiant beings of paradise, but as frightening skeletal figures. Their faces are stark white, their arms and legs coated in a white chalky powder called Tiatl. Their teeth are bared in a perpetual snarl. Their unbound hair is wild and tangled, and their earlobes are ragged and torn. They are driven by a deep sense of frustration and envy. They look upon the living with bitterness. They are especially hostile towards living women, whom they envy for the children they have. They lurk at the crossroads, waiting for a lone traveler to pass. The fear is that a Cihuateteo will strike a child down with sickness, most commonly epilepsy or facial paralysis. They might possess the child, causing uncontrollable seizures. The belief was so strong that on these 5 days, parents would not let their children out of the house for any reason. If a child had to be outside, they would have their face smeared with soot to disguise them and make them unattractive to the goddesses. This specific fear of child stealing or child harming spirits is a very common motif in folklore around the world. But the Aztec version is unique because of who these spirits are. They are not random demons or monsters. They are the community's own honored dead. It's as if a nation's decorated war heroes were believed to return from Arlington Cemetery once a year to terrorize the suburbs. You notice a bizarre, specific detail in the preparations for their arrival. At the small shrines that are set up at the crossroads, shrines dedicated to the Cihuateteo themselves, people leave offerings. But the offerings are not just flowers and incense. They are things meant to appease or distract the goddesses. They are offerings of bread baked in the shape of them. But most strangely, they are offerings of clothing and weaving tool. The idea is that the goddesses, seeing these tools of their former domestic lives, will be placated, their anger soothed by the memory of their womanly duties. It's a desperate attempt to appeal to the human woman who still exists somewhere inside the terrifying goddess. The very nature of these returning spirits has been a source of scholarly debate. Were they considered truly evil, the Aztecs didn't have a simple good versus evil binary like in Christian theology. Their gods were complex, with both creative and destructive aspects. The Cihuateteo were not evil in a satanic sense. They were powerful, dangerous, and acted according to their nature. Their nature was one of frustration and pain. The harm they caused wasn't out of pure malice, but was an overflow of their own divine agony. They were not punishing sinners, they were simply lashing out. As night falls, you stay within the secure walls of the compound. No one dares to venture out. You can almost imagine them out there, these pale, skeletal figures, drifting silently through the empty streets, their chalk-white faces glowing in the moonlight. You think of Isel. Is she one of them? Is the gentle soul her family remembers now a snarling, child-stealing phantom? The family does not speak her name tonight. To do so might attract her attention. Their pride in her is for the other 360 days of the year. Tonight is for fear and respect. They are hiding from their goddess. It is the final, tragic irony of her story. Her ultimate reward for her sacrifice is to be so terrifying that even the people who love her most must lock their doors and pray she doesn't find them. The fear is a physical presence in the night. Every scrape of a branch against the wall, every gust of wind that moans through the alley, is interpreted through a filter of dread. The crossroads, those mundane intersections of daily life, have been transformed into supernatural danger zones. You huddle inside the compound with the family, the gate once again barred, though less for a physical threat and more for a spiritual one. The children are kept in the innermost room, away from any doors or windows. The adults speak in hushed tones, their conversation carefully avoiding any mention of the goddesses, lest their names act as an invitation. This deep-seated fear of the crossroads is not unique to the Aztecs, of course. Across many cultures, crossroads are seen as liminal spaces where the veil between worlds is thin. They are places of decision, of transition, and therefore of magic and danger. Witches' covens, deals with the devil, ghostly apparitions. The folklore is rich and global, but the Aztec version is terrifyingly specific. It's not a random ghost you might meet, it's your own deified aunt, cousin, or sister. The danger is not just to children. The Cihuateteo are believed to be particularly hostile towards men, especially adulterous ones. They might afflict a man with palsy, causing his mouth to become twisted and his limbs to shake uncontrollably. They could also dope the person to madness, their minds shattered by a glimpse of the divine, rage-filled beings. You listen as an old woman in the compound tells a cautionary tale, a story meant to keep the young boys inside and quiet. She speaks of a man from a neighboring Kalpulai, a man known for his arrogance and his wandering eye. One night, on a day of the Cihuateteo, he boasted that he feared no spirit and foolishly decided to walk home via the main crossroads. His friends begged him not to, but he laughed at their fears. He never made it home. They found him the next morning, huddled at the base of the small shrine, his eyes wide with a terror that would never leave them. His mouth was twisted to one side, and he could do nothing but drool and babble incoherently. He had seen the goddesses, and they had mocked him, leaving his mind in ruins. This story highlights the social control aspect of the belief. The Cihuateteo are not just random monsters, they are enforcers of social norms. They punish arrogance. They punish sexual infidelity. They are agents of the conservative, ordered worldview of the Aztec state, using supernatural terror to keep people in line. If you are a good, humble, faithful family man, you have less to fear. If you are a boastful adulterer, you are marking yourself as a target. Amidst the fear, you learn of a very strange and specific piece of counter-magic. This is a bit of obscure Aztec lore that shows their practical, and sometimes desperate, approach to dealing with the supernatural. It was believed that if a man was brave or foolish enough, he could physically fight back against a Cihuateteo. The goal was not to kill the goddess, which was impossible, but to hold on to her until sunrise. If a man could successfully wrestle with the goddess all night, she would be forced to grant him a boon in exchange for her freedom. She might promise him great wealth or, more importantly, a magical object. This object was often a max DLI or loincloth that would give him the power to capture many enemies in battle. But there was a catch. He had to go home and immediately perform a series of complex rituals and offerings. If he failed to do so, the goddess would not give him the promised reward, but would instead tell him that he was doomed to die a miserable death very soon. It's a deal with the devil type of folktale, a high-risk, high-reward encounter with the divine. The existence of such a story is fascinating because it suggests that the goddesses, while terrifying, were not all-powerful. They could be challenged. Their power could, theoretically, be bent to human will. The historical debate around these beliefs is complex. Did people really believe they could wrestle a goddess, or were these stories more like allegories, cautionary tales about the dangers of hubris and the potential rewards of courage? Some scholars argue that these tales represent a kind of shamanic initiation narrative, where a hero must confront a terrifying supernatural being to gain power and wisdom. Others see it more as a form of psychological wish fulfillment, a way for men to imagine themselves as dominant, even over the most powerful and feared female spirits. The true meaning is likely a mix of both, a story that operated on multiple symbolic levels. Inside the compound, no one is contemplating wrestling a goddess. The strategy is purely defensive. The matriarch places offerings of food and pulq, the alcoholic drink, just outside the gate. This is not an act of worship, but of appeasement. It's like leaving out a bowl of milk for a potentially malevolent fairy. The hope is that the spirits will take the offering and pass by the house, their hunger and anger momentarily sated. The long night wears on. The fear at the crossroads dictates the geography of the entire city, emptying the streets and turning every home into a small, sealed capsule of anxiety. The glory Isel achieved in death has created a permanent, recurring wound of fear in the heart of her community. Her honor in the heavens is their terror on earth. As you sit in the protected silence of the compound, hiding from the very goddess the family once guarded, the profound contradiction of it all settles in your mind. How can a single figure be the object of such immense pride and such gut-wrenching terror simultaneously? How can the soul of a beloved family member become a public menace? This is the great paradox of the Cihuateteo, a belief system that seems, from a modern perspective, to be fundamentally schizophrenic. It's a contradiction that has puzzled and fascinated scholars for generations. On one hand, You have the glorious death. Izl's sacrifice was equated with that of the most honored male warrior. Her family was elevated by her status. They speak her name with reverence. Her soul travels with the sun, a beautiful, poetic fate that provides immense comfort. This is the official narrative, the one that supports the imperial ideology of honorable sacrifice. It gives meaning to the horrific reality of maternal mortality, transforming a biological tragedy into a cosmic victory. It reinforces the state's message that dying for the collective, whether on the battlefield or the birthing bed, is the noblest path. On the other hand, you have the monstrous return. The moment she touches the earth, she becomes a skeletal, snarling, child-stealing fiend. She is a source of disease and madness. Her community, including her own family, must hide from her. They must perform rituals of appeasement and protection to ward her off. This narrative reinforces a different set of social values: conformity, humility, and the protection of the family unit against outside, chaotic forces. So which is the real belief? The Aztec mind, it seems, was perfectly capable of holding both of these opposing ideas at the same time, without any sense of cognitive dissonance. They did not see it as a contradiction. They saw it as two different aspects of the same powerful, complex being. Think of it like a volcano. The Aztecs, living in a valley surrounded by them, knew this duality intimately. A volcano can be a beautiful, majestic mountain, a source of fertile soil that nourishes the crops. It is a landmark, a home to spirits, a sacred place. But it can also be a terrifying, destructive force that rains fire and ash, destroying everything in its path. It is both a creator and a destroyer. The Cihuateteo were like spiritual volcanoes. Their sacrifice was majestic and life-affirming for the cosmos. Their return was a dangerous, destructive eruption of their unresolved trauma. This leads to a quirky and revealing tidbit about their artistic depictions. The famous, haunting statues of the Cihuateteo that have been unearthed by archaeologists perfectly capture this duality. At first glance, they are terrifying. The faces are contorted in a rictus of agony, the teeth are bared, the hands are curled into menacing claws. They are monsters, but if you look closer, you can see subtle signs of their divinity and their former humanity. Their hair might be styled in the manner of a goddess. They might wear the jewelry of a noble woman. Some statues even have traces of a single tear carved on their cheek, a permanent symbol of their sorrow. The artists weren't just carving a monster, they were carving a portrait of divine agony. The academic world has long wrestled with how to interpret this contradiction. Early 20th century scholars, often influenced by their own cultural biases, tended to focus on the monstrous aspects, seeing the Aztecs as a morbid, death-obsessed culture. More recent scholarship, however, has tried to embrace the paradox itself as the key to understanding. Some feminist historians have argued that the monstrous return was a way for a patriarchal society to contain and control the power it had granted to women in death. By making them terrifying, the male-dominated priestly class could ensure that these female spirits never became figures of pure worship that might challenge the authority of male gods like Cihuateteo. Another theory, rooted in psychology, is that the belief system was a way of processing a complex social grief. The glorious death narrative allows the community to feel pride and find meaning. The monstrous return narrative allows them to express the anger, fear, and ugliness that are also a natural part of losing someone in a traumatic way. It gives them a ritualized outlet for the negative emotions that the honor-focused funeral rite suppressed. This debate is far from over. Was the primary purpose social control, a psychological coping mechanism, or simply a reflection of a worldview that saw creation and destruction as two sides of the same coin? There is no single, easy answer. The truth is likely a tangled combination of all these factors. For the family huddled in the compound, these academic theories mean nothing. They are living the paradox. They feel pride in Izl's solar journey and fear of her earthly return. The contradiction is not a puzzle to be solved, it is a reality to be survived. It is the price of living in a world where the gods are not distant and benign, but close, powerful, and deeply, terrifyingly human in their rage and sorrow. The night of fear passes and the city exhales. The sun rises, and the Cihuateteo retreat to this celestial realm. The crossroads are just crossroads again. Life returns to normal. As the family sweeps away the offerings from their doorstep, you begin to place Izel's fate in the broader context of death in the Aztec world. Was her path truly the most glorious? How did it stack up against the other good ways to die? The gold standard of a glorious death, the one every boy was raised to aspire to, was to be a warrior slain in battle. This was Mutilation, the flowery death. The battlefield was seen as a sacred garden where warrior flowers were harvested for the gods. A warrior killed in combat was guaranteed a place in the Eastern Paradise, the House of the Sun, where he would spend for years as a companion to Tenochtitlan before being reincarnated as a hummingbird. This is the fate that directly parallels Izel's. They were two different paths to the same solar paradise, a classic example of Aztec dualistic thinking. Then there was the next best thing, to be a captive warrior who was sacrificed. This seems horrific from a modern viewpoint, but for the Aztecs, it was a path to immense honor. A brave warrior who was captured by the enemy was not seen as a loser. He was destined for a noble purpose. He would be taken to the enemy's city, to Tenochtitlan, if he were from a place like Tlaxcala, treated with a strange mixture of reverence and condemnation. He might be well fed, dressed in fine clothes, and forced to participate in elaborate rituals, sometimes for months. During this time, he often became an Ixite or divine impersonator. He was no longer just a man, he was the living embodiment of a god. Usually Tenochtitlan. People would bow to him in the streets. He was, for a time, a god walking on earth. When the day of his sacrifice came, he would ascend the pyramid steps, not as a victim, but as the god returning to the heavens. His death was a sacred event, and his soul, too, was granted passage to the House of the Sun. So how does Izel's death compare? Her path was equal in honor and destination to that of the fallen warrior, but it was arguably a more private, less performative glory. The warrior's sacrifice was a massive public spectacle, the central drama of the Aztec state. Izel's death was a quiet, domestic tragedy that was later elevated by ritual. The warrior was celebrated before his death, Izel was celebrated after. Beyond the warriors and the Mocihuaquetzqui, there were other specialized deaths that granted a ticket to a paradise other than the sun's. If you died by drowning, lightning strike, or from certain water-related diseases like leprosy or gout, you were considered to have been chosen by the rain god Calico. Your soul did not go to the sun's house or the underworld. It went to Talakar, an verdant, watery paradise. Tenochtitlan was a place of eternal springtime, a land of endless green maize fields, lush fruit trees, and abundant water. There was no suffering, no disease, no hard labor. It was a place of joyful leisure. This is a well-documented part of their belief system, a clear incentive for a society that was so dependent on, and fearful of, both drought and flood. To be taken by water was to be rewarded with eternal water. This brings up a quirky, less-known detail. Because these individuals were chosen by Talakar, their bodies were not cremated, which was the common practice for most other deaths. They had to be buried in the earth, as if being planted like a seed, in the hope that their connection to the water god would encourage fertility in the land. Small statues of Talakar were often buried with them. So where does that leave Izel in the cosmic hierarchy? Her solar paradise was considered the most prestigious, on par with the warriors. Tenochtitlan was a lovely, comfortable afterlife, but it didn't have the same high status, sacrificial glamour as being a companion of the sun god. It was a paradise of peace, not of glory. The existence of these different afterlives, each tied to the specific manner of one's death, is a point of constant discussion for scholars. It paints a picture of a society deeply concerned with fate and destiny. Your life was important, but your death defined your eternity. Did this make people fatalistic, or did it encourage certain behaviors? A young man might fight more recklessly, knowing that a flowery death was the best possible outcome. But what about the others? You couldn't choose to be struck by lightning. This part of the system seems to be more about making sense of random tragedy, of finding divine will in the seeming chaos of nature. He wasn't just a victim of a flood, he was chosen by Talakar. It's a powerful coping mechanism. Looking at this complex map of the afterlife, you realize that Izel's fate, for all its horror and contradiction, was truly one of the most esteemed. She was not a random victim of a water-related illness, nor was she one of the countless souls destined for the grim journey through Mictlan. She was, in their worldview, in the top tier of the honored dead, a spiritual aristocrat. Her family's fear and their pride are both rooted in this fact. She was not just any soul. Years, then decades, begin to blur. The compound is still there, but the faces have changed. Cihuateteo is now an old man, a respected elder in the Calpulai, his hands gnarled from a lifetime of placing tiny, perfect stones. Izel's parents have passed on, their souls, having died of old age, now on the long, dark road through Mictlan. The stories of Izel, the Valiant Woman, are now legends told to and who never knew her. Her vigil is a distant heroic memory. Then, one day, the world tilts on its axis. Strange news arrives from the coast. Rumors of floating mountains on the great eastern sea. Men with skin as pale as the moon, with hair on their faces like corn silk, and with strange beasts that they ride like deer. They carry weapons that make a sound like thunder and spit fire. The old gods fall silent. The omens, once so clear, become confused and contradictory. The arrival of the Spanish under Hernan Cortés in 1519 is a cataclysm that the Aztec worldview is not equipped to handle. It is the beginning of the end. You watch as the magnificent city of Tenochtitlan, once the center of the universe, becomes a battlefield, then a ruin. The canals run red not with ritual blood, but with the blood of a brutal, desperate war. The temples are toppled, the idols smashed. A new god is declared, one who demands not sacrifice of blood, but of the soul. In the aftermath of the conquest, a new kind of scholar emerges, the Spanish friars. Men like Bernardino de Sahagam and Diego Duran, driven by a complex mix of religious fervor to eradicate paganism and a genuine intellectual curiosity, they begin a massive project to document the world they are in the process of destroying. They sit with the surviving Aztec elders, the nobles and priests who still remember the old ways, and they ask them to tell their stories. It is through their work, most notably Sahagan's encyclopedic Florentine Codex, that we know the story of Izel and the sea. Cihuateteo, and it is here that we see the old beliefs through a new, distorting lens. You can almost picture the scene: a Spanish friar in his simple brown robes, sitting across from a grizzled Aztec elder. The friar asks about childbirth customs. The elder, speaking in Nahuatl, describes the midwife's war cry, the 4-day vigil, the glory of the Mocihuaquetzqui. The friar listens, his quill scratching on the parchment, but he hears it through his own filter. Glory like a warrior, he might think. How barbaric to equate a woman's death with the soldiers. They guard the body from thieves, he asks. So, they are cannibals and grave robbers, these people. And the spirits return to haunt the crossroads, he concludes. Clearly these are not honored souls, but demons, agents of Satan who prey on the innocent. This is the great challenge for modern historians reading these colonial sources. They are an invaluable, irreplaceable treasure trove of information. Without them, the story of the Cihuateteo would be lost forever. But they are not objective ethnography. They are documents written by the conquerors for the purpose of understanding and ultimately eradicating the native religion. The friar's own medieval Christian worldview, with its rigid ideas of good and evil, heaven and hell, saints and demons, colors every description. You see this in the language they use. The Aztec gods are consistently referred to as devils. The rituals are idolatry. The complex, paradoxical nature of a figure like the sea, Cihuateteo, is flattened into a simpler, more sinister image. The glorious companion of the sun aspect is downplayed, while the terrifying, child-stealing ghoul aspect is emphasized, because it fits neatly into the Christian conception of a demon. This raises a tantalizing question that scholars still debate: how much subtle resistance did these indigenous collaborators embed in their work when they drew a picture of a sea, Cihuateteo? Were they just following the friar's instructions, or were they, in the curl of a lip or the style of a headdress, trying to preserve a shred of the old, authentic meaning a detail that the Spanish priest would not understand. The illustrations in the Florentine codex often contain layers of meaning and traditional symbolism that are not present in the Spanish text, a kind of silent, visual testimony to the old ways. The old gods are not entirely vanquished. They are driven underground. They survive by hiding, by merging with the new religion. The fierce god Tenochtitlan retreats, but his shrine on the hill of Tepeyac is soon rededicated to a new, powerful Mother, the Virgin of Guadalupe, who becomes the patron saint of Mexico. The old gods learn to wear new masks. And what of the Cihuateteo? These powerful, feared female spirits do not simply vanish. They are too deeply embedded in the psyche of the people. They retreat into the folklore of the countryside, waiting. They will shed their specific Aztec name and calendar days, but their essence, the ghost of a tormented, weeping woman, will find a new voice, a new name in the centuries to come. The twilight of the old gods is not their death, but a long, slow transformation. The centuries roll by. The great pyramids of Tenochtitlan have been dismantled, the stones used to build the cathedrals and palaces of the new Mexico City. The language of the conquerors has replaced Nahuatl in the halls of power, but the old tongue still whispers in the villages and the mountains. The empire is a distant memory, a story in a book. In this new world, a new story begins to be told, whispered around fires and in the dark of night. It's a story you might have heard, a tale that has become one of the most famous ghost stories in the world. It is the story of La Llorona, the weeping woman. The details of the story vary from region to region, from village to village, but the core elements are hauntingly consistent. A beautiful woman, often named Maria, is betrayed by the man she loves. In some versions, he is a wealthy Spanish nobleman who marries a woman of his own class, abandoning Maria and their children. In a fit of insane grief and rage, she takes her children to a river and drowns them. The moment the horrific act is done, her sanity returns. Horrified by what she has done, she is consumed by a guilt that is stronger than death itself. She drowns herself in the same river, but her spirit is denied entry into the afterlife. She is condemned to wander the earth for eternity, forever searching for the children she murdered. She is heard more often than she is seen. A chilling, unearthly wail that drifts along the riverbanks in the dead of night mishejoes. "Oh, my children!" To hear her cry is a terrifying omen, a harbinger of misfortune or even death. To see her is even worse. She appears as a tall, slender figure, dressed in a flowing white gown, her face either hidden in shadow or revealed to be a horrifying skeletal visage. She haunts bodies of water rivers, lakes, canals, the sites of her grime and her despair. As you listen to this story, the echoes of the past become undeniable. The connection between the ancient Cihuateteo and the colonial La Llorona is a classic case of Cihuateteo, the blending of different belief systems. While there is no perfect one-to-one correlation, the thematic DNA is unmistakable. Both are powerful, dangerous female spirits associated with a traumatic death related to motherhood. Both are figures of eternal, agonizing grief. The Cihuateteo are tormented by their failure to give birth. La Llorona is tormented by the murder of the children she did birth. The source of the trauma is different, but the resulting spiritual agony is the same. Both are seen as a threat, particularly to the living. They are figures to be feared and avoided. The Cihuateteo haunt the crossroads. La Llorona haunts the riverbanks. Both are liminal spaces, borders between worlds. Both have a complicated relationship with children. The Cihuateteo are feared for stealing or harming living children out of envy for the mothers. In many versions of the La Llorona story, she is said to snatch wandering children in the night, mistaking them for her own lost sons and drowning them in her confusion and grief. This connection is a major topic of interest for folklorists and historians. The debate isn't really if there's a connection, but how the transformation occurred. La Llorona is not just a simple rebranding of the Cihuateteo, she is a product of the colonial world. Her story reflects the new social realities of post-conquest Mexico. Her lover is often a Spaniard, and she is an indigenous woman or a mestiza of mixed heritage. Her story becomes an allegory for the trauma of the conquest itself, the violent, often non-consensual union of two cultures, and the subsequent abandonment and suffering of the indigenous people. You notice a particularly strange and specific tidbit that seems to directly link the two figures. Some of the earliest colonial accounts mentioned that one of the evil omens that foretold the fall of the Aztec Empire was the sound of a ghostly woman weeping in the streets of Tenochtitlan at night, crying out for her lost children. Some scholars believe this weeping woman was an Aztec deity, perhaps Cihuateteo snake woman who was a patroness of childbirth and often conflated with the Cihuateteo. If this is true, the ghostly weeping woman existed before the Spanish even arrived, providing a direct bridge for the La Llorona legend to attach itself to. So is La Llorona just Izel's ghost? 2 or 3 times removed? It's more complex than that. The story of Izel was a state's ancient belief within a coherent religious system. She was honored as well as feared. La Llorona has no honor. She is a figure of pure tragedy and terror, a cautionary tale, a folk bogeyman. The glorious, sun-accompanying aspect of the Cihuateteo has been completely stripped away, leaving only the monstrous, weeping shell behind. This is what happens when a complex goddess is forced through the filter of a new religion and a new social order. All that remains is the pain. The story of Izel, the honored goddess, is now hidden in old books. But her anger, her grief, her tormented spirit still wanders the night, forever weeping for her lost children, a permanent ghost haunting the memory of a fallen civilization. And so our journey comes to an end. You find yourself back where you started in a sense, but the world looks different now. The water of Lake Texcoco is gone, drained centuries ago. The great city of Tenochtitlan is a buried layer of stone and memory beneath the sprawling, modern metropolis of Mexico City. The roar of traffic has replaced the gentle splash of canoes. The language of the Aztecs, Nahuatl, is still spoken by over 1 million people, but it is a whisper against the shout of Spanish. You stand now, not in a dusty courtyard, but perhaps in a museum, looking at a stone statue behind a pane of glass. It's one of the Cihuateteo figures, recovered from the earth. Her stone face is contorted, her claws are tensed. She is frozen in a silent, eternal scream. And now you can understand the whole story locked within that stone. You can see the hopeful young woman, Izel, her belly full with new life. You can feel the joy and anxiety of her family, the prayers to the goddesses of the hearth. You can smell the copal incense in the birthing room and hear the encouraging, solemn war cries of the midwife, Exo. You can feel the crushing, agonizing weight of the long, impossible battle of her labor. You can see the moment of transformation when the midwife's cry announced not a birth, but the creation of a goddess. You can see the grief on its eyes' face, a sorrow so deep it transcends time. You can feel the bone-weary exhaustion and the grim determination of the 4-night vigil, the firelight flickering on the faces of the guards as they protect their beloved dead from the ambitious shadows lurking in the dark. You understand the grim purpose of the thief, the desperate young warrior who believes a severed finger can make him invincible, and the strange, psychological power that such a talisman might actually hold. You can feel the silent, tense confrontation in the night, the war of wills fought across a courtyard wall with stones and chanted words. You can picture her soul's journey to the western paradise, a place of eternal flowers and afternoon sun, where she takes her honored place among her sisters, carrying the sun on its daily journey to rest. A beautiful, comforting image. And then, you feel the chill in the air. The fear that descends upon the city when the goddesses return to earth. You see the bolted doors, the abandoned crossroads. You understand how the honored companion of the sun becomes the skeletal, snarling phantom, a being so terrifying that even her own family must hide from her. You see the final, slow transformation as the old gods fall and their stories are driven underground, twisted and changed by the collision of worlds. You see how the complex, honored and feared goddess Izel bleeds into the tragic, terrifying figure of La Llorona, her divine agony repackaged as a folk horror story, her weeping echoing down through the centuries. The story of the Aztec childbirth goddesses is a microcosm of their entire worldview. It is a story steeped in duality, honor and horror, creation and destruction, love and fear, the sacred and the profane. It's a belief system that seems alien and brutal to us, but it was their way of making sense of a world filled with both breathtaking beauty and profound, unpredictable violence. It was a way to find meaning in the meaningless, to find glory in the agony of a young woman's death. The ultimate fate of the body of Mocihuaquetzqui is a question that, in some ways, history cannot fully answer. How often were these raids successful? How many young warriors actually went into battle with the goddess's finger on there? But the archaeological evidence is silent. It's one of those historical questions where the fear of the event is a more solid and provable reality than the event itself. The vigil was real. The terror was real. The terror was real tells us everything we need to know about the power of the belief. You look at the statue one last time. You see not a monster, not a demon, but a portrait of a woman, Isel, trapped forever between her glory and her fate. Her body, a battlefield in labor, became a magical prize in death, and her story, a haunting echo in the memory of a lost world. The stone of the statue begins to soften now, its sharp edges blurring in the dim light of your imagination. The cold glass of the museum case melts away, and the silent, ancient scream of the goddess finally dissolves into the quiet hum of your room. The story is over. Let it go. Let it drift away from you like smoke from a dying fire. Its purpose fulfilled. It was just a path we walked together for a little while, a shared journey into the past, and now we have returned. The memory of Tenochtitlan, with its shimmering canals and floating gardens, can recede now, becoming just a faint ripple in the deep, quiet pool of your mind. The flickering light of the vigil, the faces of the guards, the shadows they watched so bravely. Let them all fade into a soft, indistinct warmth. The weight of their long watch can become the comforting weight of your own blanket. The rustle of the sacred trees in the western paradise can become the gentle sound of your own breathing, slow and steady. The story settles around you, not as a collection of facts to be remembered, but as the lingering echo of a dream you are already leaving behind. There is nothing left to learn, nothing left to analyze. The names and the dates can blur and drift away on the slow current of the night. The paradoxes can remain unsolved, resting peacefully in the quiet darkness. The long, winding river of this story was just a vessel, a canoe meant to carry you gently from the noise of the day to this peaceful, quiet shore. And now, you have arrived. You can step out onto the softs and of your own deep rest. The watch is over. You can sleep now. The end of the article. Good night.